Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. This is Tom Linsky, and we've got Matthew DeWinkler and Kyle Hudak with us.
We're here. Hello.
First off, let me get a confirmation from you guys. Can you all say hi just to make sure you can hear us?
They can hear you.
They can hear me. Good. Hope you guys were enjoying that Mahler. No, it was not played on the Titanic. I don't believe it was part of the White Star Line songbook. I just personally really like that song.
Yeah. I think the chat is going at light speed here.
It is. We have 212 listeners, which is, I think, our record for the start of a podcast, which is pretty cool. I'd like to get this out of the way. I'm just warning you guys. We're all very frantic right now and all over the place. It has been a very long day, and all three of us have been operating on practically no sleep. For the last, that real-time video which we just posted was 1 week's worth of work without sleep, basically. We've been working late into the night, almost every night. We stayed up almost every night. We were doing constant research. We had most of the research. We were doing constant programming while Kyle was. Matt and I were sitting around watching him and advising him over Skype, and then he recorded the shots, sent them over to me, and it was a long procedure to transfer everything. Huge file sizes. I edited in some sounds, and unfortunately, because of short notice, with a nearly 3-hour video, I didn't get a chance to add as many sounds as I would have liked, and they weren't mixed as well as I would have hoped. But that accounts for the lack of sleep. Matthew and I were just up in Brooklyn, which is a long ride for both of us, where we met with a few contacts, and then we attended a ceremony for an unveiling of a plaque for Father Thomas Biles, who was a second-class passenger on the Titanic and stayed behind when the ship was sinking. So that was a really exciting day. We met a lot of awesome people, and I walked in the door as soon as you guys started hearing Mahler. That's how recently I got home after a long road trip. So it was very stressful, not sure if I would make it. So here we are. Okay, we are here, and now we
4 minutes to spare.
We now have the honor of leading everyone in our annual vigil, which we have recently made a tradition, which is pretty cool. We are honored to see that nearly 250 people have joined us, which is fantastic. We did release that real-time syncing video today, which was awesome. We didn't think we would make it. We were really nervous about not making it. But here we are.
We didn't come up with the idea, but just like last week, wasn't it?
Well, I had the idea for a while, and I think Kyle also independently had the idea for a while.
I think we all kind of did too, yeah.
Yeah, but the anniversary snuck up on us, and we thought, you know what, let's talk about what we're going to do. The idea came up, and we're like, oh, we got plenty of time. It's like, no, we don't. We have 7 days. So we had to jump on that. So, yeah, it was put into practice a week ago. So, hello, everybody. Oh, man, our numbers are going up. Almost 270 now. Okay, so we don't have too much time. We're going to be playing the video. We encourage everyone out there to start playing the video as well on our command, not just yet. We're not synced up yet. We're going to be starting it at 10:06 Eastern Time. The reason being is the collision was at 10:07 Eastern Time, and there's approximately a minute of video before the collision. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be starting the video in just over 1 minute. A lot of people...
have your videos loaded and paused on 000.
Yeah, if you want to get a head start on that, you can find the link on our Facebook page. So, yes, some people are mentioning April 14th and 15th being unlucky days. We got the Titanic going down. We had Abraham Lincoln getting shot. We had the Boston bombing happen. We had a number of things happen. Of course, tax day, adding on top of that. So, not a good day. This is certainly a very worthy day to have our vigil. Okay, so have your video paused at 0, and you can find the link on our Facebook page. It should be one of the most recent links posted, and I've got mine ready. We have 2 minutes. Oh, we have 1 minute. 1 minute, sorry.
We have 1 minute left.
1 minute. I'm trying to think. Any other intros we got to do because we got to start this in like 30 seconds.
No, we can just talk while it's happening. So
ready?
Let's get ready.
Ready, everyone?
It's 11:39.
Yeah. And 3, 2, 1, go.
We're going.
There's the obnoxious annotation.
Oops.
If you guys want to turn that off, by the way, there's a neat little trick to remove those annoying pop-up texts. You click the settings button and just click off annotations. All right, so here's the Titanic sailing along.
Hard to starboard!
Hard to starboard, right.
We're going to just let this unfold without our own narration.
The helm's hard over.
Helm, hard to starboard, sir.
What did you see?
Iceberg, straight ahead.
Thank you. All stop!
All stop, aye.
Hold to port!
Hard to port, aye.
Helm's hard over, sir.
Helm, hard to port, sir.
Close the emergency doors.
Close the emergency doors.
Ring the warning bell first.
Take care of the time and enter into the lock.
Aye, sir.
All right, so some of you Vigilant fans may recognize that from our recent documentary. So now here we are. We're going to get to watch the rest of the sinking in real time, taking it from where that documentary left off after the collision. Titanic has just opened up more compartments than she can bear, and water is pouring in very, very rapidly. The engines were stopped even before she collides with the iceberg, but it's really incredible to see just how long it takes for that ship to slow to a stop. Various passengers had noticed the iceberg to different degrees. Some saw it, some felt it, and some just heard about it. But it's also very interesting to hear how many people were unaware that you think should have been aware of it. I mean, it's certainly understandable that some people would have slept through it or just not noticed, especially since the ship's always vibrating. It's got the engines going. But there were 2 quartermasters on the very back deck, the poop deck. It's very interesting to know that they didn't know this happened. They saw the iceberg pass, but they only saw it at a glimpse, and it was dark. And initially they thought it was the sail of a schooner which had passed by. And they thought nothing of it. So time goes by before they even realized it was going down. In fact, we mentioned it later. It does come up in the text that appears on screen throughout this video. But they don't have any sort of suspicions that something's up until the first rockets were going up, which is a good hour from now. So here she's generally easing to a stop. Matt, you might be muted.
Yes. Yeah.
Were you muted up until now?
Yes.
Okay, were you trying to say anything?
No, sorry.
I'm just surprised how silent you guys are. Leaving me out here all alone.
Oh, he's so you want us to run our mouths.
Yeah, I don't have much to
I'm
say.
good when the lifeboats start. Remember, like I said, when we were making this, I had like little input until those lifeboats started to lower.
Yeah, that was Matt's baby, the lifeboat timings
For some reason.
and the rockets.
So, she's slowing down. The crew is stunned. Captain Smith is sent for. They send a sailor to go get him, and but he had already noticed. Like he's a very experienced captain. He feels when the ship does something different. He feels when the ship turns its engines off. He feels when the ship turns. He feels a minor collision. So he already knew something was up because he was getting ready to go to bed. And he walks onto the bridge and asks what had happened. Officer Murdoch, the first officer, third in command of the ship, and the officer on watch, so the ship is in his hands at the moment, informs him that it was an iceberg. He put the ship hard to starboard, which means turns the ship to port, but he couldn't avoid it. And the Titanic hit the iceberg at a glancing blow. Very interesting to note, a lot of people like to say that the Titanic was poorly built. Obviously, because she sank, you know. People like to assume that just because a ship sinks must mean there's a fatal flaw in it. But very interestingly, certain naval architects have said that even one of the best designed modern battleships would not have survived the blow that Titanic received. So, when you think about it,
Olympic.
Well, yeah, let me get to that in a moment. I mean,
Yeah.
She was a very well-designed ship. If she wasn't, she wouldn't have held for nearly 3 hours. She would have gone down almost right away. Lusitania, she sank in 18 minutes. So you were saying about the Olympic?
Yeah, she had like several collisions during her career.
Yeah, she
and
did.
She survived all of them and pretty much sunk 2 of them. One on purpose, one accidentally.
Yes. She was used as a troop carrier during World War I, and a U-boat attacked, fired a torpedo, and missed, and the Olympic ran her down. And then picked up POWs.
Yeah, if I recall, they later discovered that one torpedo hit the Olympic, but it didn't detonate. They found a little dent in the hull.
Yeah, I'm tangenting too much here, but only like 1 out of 4 torpedoes in World War I actually detonated. They had a really bad success rate. Okay, back to Titanic, which is why we're all here. So, Titanic is stopped. Inspections are being carried out. There's no real combined inspection going on. Captain Smith, as we see right now, 11:47 p.m., Captain Smith orders the engines to half ahead. Some of the crew had already gone down to check out the damage. Some of the crew that were down in the damaged areas are already reporting their damage, and Captain Smith is about to make his way down there as well. Thomas Andrews goes on his own. Bruce Ismay goes on his own. The officers each go down independently. Captain Smith goes down independently, and they all kind of rendezvous about 5-10 minutes later up on the bridge and report to each other what is going on. But the only real person making an inspection right now who is going to have any sort of valid say in what the status of the ship is Andrews. Thomas Andrews. For those of you who do not know, he is the ship's chief architect, the master shipbuilder, the designer, whatever you want to call it. And as White Star Line tradition, he is on board to basically troubleshoot, along with a few apprentices. He is on board the Titanic to troubleshoot the first voyage and see if there are any problems, how he could fix it. So it's really a very fortunate circumstance that he is on board. Unfortunate for him, of course, because he doesn't survive. But he played a very significant role in determining that the ship is sinking. And it did take him about 25-35 minutes to figure this out. But had he not been on board, the captain, the crew, no matter how experienced they are, do not understand the ship from an architectural standpoint, and they would have been going back and forth. And they would have been going back and forth debating, can she survive? Can she survive if we stay still? is she able to move forward under her own power? And if Andrews were not there, that decisive statement of she is sinking might not have been made, and therefore the lifeboats might not have been ordered to be prepared when they were. So, it really is a blessing that Thomas Andrews is on board, and it's also a blessing that Bruce Ismay is on board. We can go into that later, though. That's gonna be something we'll save for later. Now, I'm borrowing a lot, I have to be honest, from our historical advisors here. This is a very interesting discussion we've had. It's also very fortunate that Officer Murdoch is on duty at the time of the Titanic, because out of everyone in the world, Murdoch has the most experience handling the Olympic-class liners. Captain Smith as well, but he's not a deck officer. He is the captain. Whereas Murdoch is in charge of watches. He's in charge of the bridge at certain times, so he knows how the Olympic handled. And the Olympic pretty much was architecturally identical to the Titanic. And therefore, when he spotted that iceberg, he was the best person on Earth to make a decision about what to do. So, realistically speaking, you can't hold it against him that it collided. No one else would have performed any better. And it just is a simple statement of fact that by the time the iceberg was spotted, it was too late. I believe that was a discussion we had with Kyle and I had with Park Stevenson just a few days ago when we were showing him the sinking animation. Might have been Bill Souter. This week has been a whole blend. I apologize for that. Okay, so Titanic right now is moving at about half ahead. Kyle, do you want to elaborate on maybe how fast that is? Or are you not sure? That's more a Parks question.
It's half of full speed.
So we're looking at about 12, 13 knots.
What, 11, 12, yeah?
Yeah.
Now, I just want to say it's probably going way faster in the animation than it should. Just so you know, for half speed.
Well, the other thing is the camera's low to the water, which is we do a lot of cinematography tricks in this to really try to improve on a lot of the other animations we've seen, especially on YouTube. Well, the camera's high up, and it makes the ship look tiny. Right now, the camera is traveling at basically human height, where a person's head were if they were standing on the water. So you are really seeing the ship from the perspective of a person. So in a lot of our shots, especially the close to the water ones, you see the ship as a ship. It's huge, it's giant, it's towering over you. So the reason I mention that is because we're close to the water, so the speed looks a lot faster because our foreground is zipping by. So what's going on the ship right now is the inspections are still being carried out. Everyone's going down. It is little over 10 minutes after the collision. We're now up to 15 minutes. Very interesting.
11:54.
11:54, thank you. Very interestingly, that water was coming in extremely rapidly, extremely fast. She had over 1 million gallons of water, or 3.75 million liters of water inside her within the first 15 minutes. We have it as a text on there. I'm opening up my sinking notes, which I had made. It's very, very interesting how quickly that water was coming in. But one of the reasons why it took so long for them to realize the condition of the ship and realize it had been a fatal blow is because it was just beyond being survivable. It was so close to that survivable threshold. So when they go down there, it's not coming in too fast. It's not I was just making the point of how fast it was coming in, but relatively speaking to the overall ship, it doesn't seem to be doing much. And that's because Titanic is a strong ship. So she's really resisting against it. So Andrews, he's got the calculations running in his head. He knows what's going on. He knows the status of the ship. But Captain Smith walks down there. Bruce Ismay walks down there. Bruce Ismay is the director of the White Star Line. In the most simplistic terms, he's the owner of the Titanic.
The engines have just stopped, it said.
Oh, the engines have just stopped.
Oh,
He goes
one thing I
down
wanted
there.
to bring
They're hang on, Kyle. They're processing this, and it's taking quite some time. They don't know that the ship has been hit hard. Andrews, however, is already starting to see the picture. Kyle, go ahead.
I seem now. Don't quote me on this. I seem to recall a figure that's been thrown around. I don't know how accurate it is or what there is to really support it. But one figure you see thrown around for the area of damage to the ship, even though the iceberg mainly, so like split seams and stuff and sheared off rivers, but the total amount of area under the waterline open to the ocean for the water to get in through has been figured to be maybe about 12 square feet, about the size of an average door, single door. And that's spread out through over several compartments, and that's how much the water is able to get at that space.
So one of the things you'll notice here is, Titanic's still moving forward. Her engines had stopped, but she's got a long time before she can actually glide to a complete halt. But it's going to be a very long time before people start noticing that she's going down by the head. Even from our third-person perspective, way out over the water, it's going to take a while for us to notice, let alone the people who are on board and can't even see the water line, and they're just going off of their own feeling and intuition. So despite how rapidly the water is coming in, it takes a long time for that ship to lower in the water. One of the things we were doing in our calculations was trying to figure out just how many feet she had sunk in the first 10 and 20 minutes. And Kyle, please correct me. I know I had this right when I gave it to you, but I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was 2.5 feet sunk in the first 10 minutes, 5 feet after 20 minutes.
I honestly don't recall. I know I brought it down pretty well in the water by this point. You can see it going down now.
Yeah, so by this point, she's down about 4.5 feet in the. She's down about 4.5 feet in the bow. which is almost unnoticeable. You really don't start to see the acceleration of the sinking until the portholes start going under. And one of the things that I'm very proud of with this animation is you get to see
The ship
that.
has stopped.
Yes, the ship has finally stopped. She will not move again, except in her fall. So, portholes, you're going to get to see the portholes going under one by one. And it's a very slow process. But you do get to see it. Honestly, in watching this back, you don't see her going down. Which is one thing I noticed is if you sit there and stare at it, it's very hard to notice her going down. In the final moments, sure, but you really only notice it when you skip around and you skip maybe a minute ahead. Then you notice, okay, she's gone down a few feet. It's very interesting. So right now she's starting to vent off steam. Now that she has come to a stop, she is exhausting her boilers. Because the boilers have pressure, so that the Titanic could start moving again if she wanted to, or if the crew wanted her to. So what they got to do now is they have to exhaust that steam and get it out, because that steam obviously is extremely hot and the water is extremely cold. 28 degrees Fahrenheit, -2 degrees Celsius. That comes in contact with the burning hot boilers, it's potentially deadly. It's explosive. So they got to get that steam out as best as they can and as quickly as they can. And it was exhausting for about an hour. It was deafening. People on the deck complained about it. Officer Lightoller compared it to steam trains, steam locomotives, blasting at their loudest possible volume. They were preparing the lifeboats, not yet, but as they were, later, with the steam going, passengers didn't even want to come outside because the steam was so loud. In the wireless room, they were complaining that they couldn't hear into their headsets because the steam outside was so loud. Someone had asked why there is still smoke, not steam, but smoke coming out of the third funnel. You guys want to jump in on this one?
Throughout the sinking, the boilers in Boiler Room 1 were still going to keep the electricity going.
Exactly. The boilers in some of the other compartments were going as well, but they had to be raked out and stopped as soon as the water threatened to come near them. And the purpose for having the steam going in some of the compartments, and obviously it's not going at full pressure, not enough to move the ship, which is why they're exhausting it but still keeping the furnaces in some areas going, is because that steam, or that pressure of the boilers, feeds the electricity. And without that boiler room going, the lights would go out. And
They had, I believe it was 4 massive electric engines, steam engines, that drove turbines, or not turbines, but generate electricity.
Yes. Someone's asking what rake out means. From what I understand, it's basically raking out the burning hot coals. You put a rake into the boiler and just pull them out. And it starts lowering the heat. Okay, for those of you now joining us, we are following our real-time sinking video, which we released just today. You can find the link to it on our Facebook page. And we are currently at 23, 36, 37, 38 point in the video. Titanic, she's starting to go down. If you can see, the G deck portholes in the forward section are a lot closer to the water than they should be. And the inspections are basically coming to a conclusion now. There's a point coming up very soon where Captain Smith goes into the wireless room. And that is where we will take that. Someone just asked if we made this animation ourselves. Yes, this is 100% ours. The model is... Oh, that's something important to address. The model is not our game model. It is our temporary model, which we have been using, while our really high quality model for the game is still under construction. This is actually Kyle's
Yeah.
old virtual sailor model he made about 10 years ago, and I still think it's darn good.
Oh, 10 years. I started building this model for Virtual Sailor in 2009, early 2009, and finished in 2010.
Oh, I thought this was your 2007 model. Okay, my mistake. Well, anyway, it's still old. So
I
anyway,
didn't even build models in 2007.
okay. Well, anyway, yeah, this is the old model, and which we've been using as our temporary model stand-in while the high-quality exterior is still under construction. And you may notice it on some of the close-up shots that this is lower quality. Some things are just textures, some things are just 2D. But overall, it certainly serves the purpose. And yes, this is Unreal Engine 4. We have not highly adjusted the effects. It's very low animation quality, things like that. And when we do put it in the final game, when we program the final game, obviously the water's going to be more interactive with the ship. There's going to be more things going on. There's going to be splashing constantly. You're going to see wakes. When the well deck goes under, it's kind of just a flat plane feeding into the well deck in this animation. Obviously, it's going to be coming in through the holes at the floor of it. It's going to be pouring over the side. So you're really going to get to see that in the final game. What you can also see right now is that the G-deck windows are now touching the water. Just a moment ago, when I mentioned it, they were still hovering over the water. But now, I'm watching it right now, and it looks like that first window is just about to disappear. It's like 2 pixels above. So, one last thing to say about this animation. It's brighter than it would have been. Someone complained about that a couple minutes ago. For 2 reasons. One, we didn't make it dark because we wanted you guys to see what was going on. And 2, when I export it from Final Cut Pro, it does this annoying filter. I'm not going to go into it. It's very hard to compensate. And if I wanted to put the compensation thing on it, this would not be rendered in time for right now. So here we go. G-Deck is now submerging.
What's happening inside of G-Deck at this point?
Well, I don't know if it's this exact moment. Oh, well, here we got a text thing. Let me address that, and then I'll come back to your question. 1206. Nope, this one's kind of your baby. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, the first class lounge is open for passengers and designated as an assembly point for the evacuation. So the lounge is extinguished at night. The same with the smoking room. Most public spaces are closed at night to force passengers to go to bed, but they're going to open the lounges so that they can get the passengers up from bed and get them started in the evacuation. But eventually, they're going to have to close these rooms to force passengers out on the deck into the lifeboats because they don't want to go out on deck where it's cold and noisy and awful. So go ahead with what's happening on G-Deck.
I'll get back to that in a moment. I just got a pretty cool text. I just got a pretty cool text from Parks, who's listening to our podcast. He said Boiler Room 1 wouldn't have been able to be lit off until at least an hour after the sinking. But the smoke is still accurate because Boiler Room 2 would have been carrying the electrical load until Boiler Room 1 got up to pressure. That's right, Boiler Room 1 wasn't really even lit. So,
No, it wasn't.
So they were turning that on at the point. So anyway, that's just to quickly touch on the smoke question earlier. G-Deck, an interesting little story which is happening approximately now. I believe it was 3rd Officer Pittman, on his own inspections, went down under the forecastle on C-Deck, and he came across a couple of sailors. And sailors had all their bags and luggage with them. And Pittman's like, what are you guys doing up here, and why do you have all your stuff? And he says, well, our quarters are flooded, so we've come up here. So G-Deck, even on the inside at this point, is awash. And it's starting to trickle into the first crew quarters in the very forward section, and probably some of 3rd class. The time we're at right now, to be honest, is hard to calculate without those text boxes. So, as soon as you see another text box, you'll know
It's
the time.
12:08.
It's 12:08?
Yeah, roughly.
Thank you.
And also, we are at 29:20 in the video.
29:20, yes. For those of you joining us, get the link off our Facebook page.
We're on 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, and so on.
The inspections are still going on. That is how long these inspections have been taking. So it is accurate that Boxhall or Pittman would be coming across those sailors right about now. It is accurate that their quarters have been flooding and they're coming up and they're making their way out. Interestingly, and we don't make note of this in the text on the video, but the lookouts are still on watch.
Well, they're there for a while, aren't they?
Yeah, they're up there for a long time. They were just up there on watch. I believe Matt jumped in here. Was it still Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee up there, or were they relieved at midnight and it was now the second watch?
I think they were relieved, and it was two others because they got away in boat 6 rather early on from the port side. So.
Okay.
Because I think they noticed that the deck was about to flood, and they're like, let's get out of here.
Okay. Yeah, so it's very interesting. They were up there. I mean, the ship's not moving. The ship is in a very bad state, and they're still on watch. But then again...
And the G deck is forward or under now.
Completely. The whole section of portholes are gone.
Passengers are starting to notice, too. You know, like, there's passengers on E deck who are looking down the staircase all the way to G deck and seeing the mail room ordeal happening with the post bags and such.
That was the two Thayers. John Thayer and Jack Thayer Jr. They were doing their own little inspection because Thayer noticed the iceberg collision, and they went down to E deck and looked down to the postal room, and they saw everything going, and they saw the water coming up the stairs. So certain passengers are certainly starting to notice. Lawrence Beasley is also doing his own inspections. He knows something is up. Various passengers in every class are starting to realize something is up, but it's only the most observant ones. The officers have all been woken up, and they're all doing their own thing, except 5th Officer Lowe, who nobody likes.
Sorry.
They just let Lowe keep sleeping, and he really doesn't wake up for like another half hour.
How do you even manage to sleep through that steam going off?
I don't know. Well, he's a sailor. I guess you get used to sleeping through loud and very obnoxious sounds and movements of the ship.
I did recall reading some quote from him that was said something along the lines of, when you're an officer, you don't get much sleep, but when you do go to sleep, you're basically dead.
Yes, that I recall that quote as well. Yeah, that was him. There you go. That's how you sleep through it. He had long days, too. Someone's saying they wonder why no one liked him. Or no, they wonder why no one woke him, and the answer is basically because no one liked him. Not to sound harsh to Lowe, but he really didn't get along with the rest of the crew, and most of the officer staff had already worked with each other, or at least they knew each other before. Lowe was the odd man out, who he also didn't get along that well with them. So it's very interesting. He was grumpy throughout the whole sinking and kind of got out of there relatively quickly. But he was also a big hero that night. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So, I'm watching the ship, and she's starting to get a serious list forward. Not a serious one, but a noticeable one, I should say. And now we have the F-deck windows starting to get close to the water. It was just over the course of maybe 10 minutes that we just watched G-deck go under. So, there's one thing I noticed, and I'm sorry to bring up the movie, but I'm going to bring up the James Cameron movie here.
Uh-oh.
I grew up with that movie, as many of us have, and one thing that always bothered me was it seemed like the ship sank really fast up until it hit the white in the front, up until it hit the forecastle and the well deck, and then it just got really slow, and all of everything happened as the superstructure was starting to go under. But in doing this animation, in doing the research for this game, it's not as unrealistic as I always thought it was. In fact, it's quite accurate for two different reasons. One, If you watch, as you're watching this animation, you will notice it actually gets up to that point relatively quickly, or at least a lot quicker than you would have anticipated. And number two, all of those actions would have happened in the section of time when the superstructure is starting to submerge, because it would have been incredibly slow, even in terms of the story, even in terms of everyone with their evacuation. It would have been very slow up until that point, because they're all walking around finding out what's going on. No one wants to see that in a movie. So that's just a quick note, because I'm always excited when I realize something.
When it comes up in the sinking, but like once those areas of deck go underwater, it does speed up because of certain other factors. But we can bring those up when it occurs.
We will, yes, when it occurs.
Yeah.
F deck.
But someone just pointed out that the movie was pretty accurate for everything that was known at the time.
Oh yeah, that's a huge thing you got to consider.
Yes.
Cameron and the advisors, all on that team, they weren't wrong by showing it climb up out of the water. They were right, based off of what they knew. I mean, it was only really disproven later. Ironically, by the same people who made the movie.
Right.
So,
yeah, because he put in more effort than anyone else would put in.
Yes. A lot of the information we have in this, is almost thanks to him indirectly. So.
Oh, this is one for you, Tom.
Oh, I clicked away for a second. All right, Phillips and Bride, two telegraph operators, right now are put on standby. Andrews has still not confirmed that the Titanic is sinking, but he's working it out, and the crew is starting to get it. So Captain Smith goes in to the wireless room, which is just behind the first funnel and just forward of the grand staircase. He goes in and he's like, get ready to send out the call for help. And Phillips is like, which call do you want me to use? And Captain Smith says, the regulation international call for help. Just that. He's referring to CQD, not SOS or anything like that. So now we have F deck going under. And they're still figuring it out. They're still working on it, which really goes to show you that our perspective in this video is so much better, more advantageous than what they had on board, because they can't see it. They can't see that F deck has submerged.
Unless you look out the window.
Yeah, true. But most of them are cabins. You wouldn't think to go in there.
Right.
The orchestra has now begun playing in the lounge. This is kind of a controversial thing, but we don't have time to touch on that.
We can talk about that all night.
Yes, true.
They might have been split up. Some might have been playing in the B deck reception room. The point is they got together, maybe on their own accord. Maybe they were ordered to play to calm the passengers, and we know how that went. So we can leave it at that. Heroes them all.
One of the things I'm going to mention here, back to the telegraph operators, is Parks that just remind me of this.
Who did?
Parks. He's texting.
Yeah, that's why I didn't hear Parks. I want to make sure it was Parks. Yeah.
So anyway, here's the difference between CQD. By the way, the Titanic's now starting to list to starboard because the water's coming in on that side. But anyway, here is the difference between CQD and SOS. SOS was a very new code. It was only adopted about 6 years ago. A lot of people think Titanic was the first ship to use it. It was not. However, it was one of the first ships. It was definitely one of the earliest and definitely the most famous use of the SOS code. However,
still the most famous.
However, CQD is the standard Marconi call for attention and then statement of distress. CQ means we need your attention. D means distress. So, Marconi is obviously the company that is running the telegraph on the Titanic. And while it is a company code, it's really only a code used by Marconi operators. Marconi is the biggest name, or at least one of the biggest names, of telegraphs on the ocean. So even if your company was not Marconi, you knew what CQD meant. So that was the standard traditional code for distress. SOS was just adopted, And these Marconi operators were British. They were very proud of the old codes, and British operators were very hesitant to adopt the new SOS. So they're sticking to CQD, the Regulation International Call for Help. She's really starting to go to the starboard now. She's starting to noticeably list in that direction. She's also starting to noticeably list forward.
Quick update for the people who are watching. We are at 40 minutes and 9 seconds, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, so on.
Yes, thank you. Matt, what time are we at in Titanic time?
It's almost 12:20.
Oh, I got ahead of myself. I apologize for that, guys. When Captain Smith went into the wireless room, he didn't tell them to send the call. He told them, hold on, but be ready to send out a call. And he left. Phillips and Bride were standing in there kind of stunned. What is going on? Why are we being told to go to standby?
Oh, Tom, if you have a second, I just found out you're coming back to the crow's nest. It was around this time that it was Lookout Hogg who was in the crow's nest, who realized that something was going on, and common sense told him to basically put the cover on the crow's nest and get out of there.
Okay, cool.
So he rung up the bridge and said, can we leave here? And he didn't get an answer, and they left. So it's at this time that the crew left the crow's nest.
Interesting. Basically, no one was on the bridge at this point, as far as I'm aware. There might have been a quartermaster on the bridge, but I don't know if he had the authority to answer the telephone. Everyone else is still inspecting. But just about now, it is actually just this moment, 12:22 a.m., that Andrews finally states she's sinking by the bow. She has an hour, maybe two, to stay afloat. So we're at 12:21 right now. That is approximately now. It wasn't so much a big discussion like you see in the movies. It wasn't Andrews making this presentation to the crew. It wasn't all the crew standing around and looking over the plans. What it probably more likely was is Smith and Andrews met with each other. They ran into each other, and Andrews said, "This is the status of the ship. She's not going to make it." If they were to look over the schematics and the plans, they probably would have gone to Andrews' cabin, which is approximately near the third funnel on A deck, just off of the aft grand staircase. So, while it's very noticeable from our perspective out over the ocean that the ship is going down and leaning forward and leaning to the side, it's very noticeable to us. The ship is still waking up. The people on board are still waking up to the situation. Here we go. Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer who is on board, confirms the damage is too much for the Titanic to survive. It is only now that the situation is starting to unfold. The order had been already given to start preparing the lifeboats, or at least start summoning the crew to prepare the lifeboats. But the ship was not officially under evacuation until this point. So everything you know, where the lifeboats are going, the people are being evacuated, none of that has started to unfold yet. So it looks like the Titanic is going down a lot. It looks like she's not going to last long. At the rate she's going, I would say she'd probably only survive another 45 minutes. But, very interestingly about the process of the ship sinking, she would go down relatively fast and then slow down. The reason for this is because of the bulkheads inside. As a new compartment is exposed to the flooding, the water is coming in, it's coming in relatively free, but then the weight of the incoming water and the buoyancy of the remainder of the ship start to equalize, and the pressure it's flooding in starts to decrease. and the speed at which the ship is tipping down starts to decrease as well. So, the rate at which the Titanic is submerging is very variant. Right now, we're still seeing the forward compartments which were breached flooding. Now, with those bulkheads, the water would rise just as it's nearing the top. It would get to the point where it looks like it's going to stop because the buoyancy of the ship is about to stop the flooding. But it just makes it over. And now the next compartment is exposed. But that's not yet. Time check, Matt.
We are at 45:15 right now, and it is 12:24 a.m.
For those of you now joining us, because we have nearly 400 listeners, for those of you just chiming in now on our Facebook page, which I assume you're all familiar with, we have a YouTube video link, Titanic sinking in real time. We are all watching this, basically in unison. So I encourage you to go check that out.
It's the first time I've seen it, too.
Yeah, that's the first time I've watched it straight through.
I am posting the link in the chat several times so you don't miss it. It'll take you to near the timestamp we're at, and currently we're at 45, 59, 46, 46:01, 02, 03, 04, 5.
And again, what time Titanic is it?
It's 12:25 a.m.
12:25. Now, Captain Smith enters the wireless room. Send the call for assistance. Which call? The Regulation International Call for Help. Just that. Here we go. The first distress calls are sent out from the Titanic. CQD is the regulation call sent in the beginning. So only now is Titanic's telegraph starting to send out, we're in distress. We have struck an iceberg. CQD, here is our position. Interestingly enough, Titanic is transmitting a position for where they think it is, but they are wrong. They're transmitting the incorrect position. Now, this is not a significant problem. It's just the best they know for now. So it's like, we're approximately here, but expect more accurate coordinates shortly. So the precision isn't quite necessary just yet because no ships are close enough. It's going to take a significant amount of time for them to get there. So by that time, they'll have the precise coordinates. So within a few minutes from now, Captain Smith orders 4th Officer Boxhall to get out the sextant and charts and look at the stars and calculate their exact position. Also, very interestingly right now, lights are spotted on the horizon. Now, this is another very controversial subject. You know, people like to argue, what ship is it? How far is it? Is it really on the horizon, or is it a mirage and it's beyond the horizon? We're not going to go into that now. All that is important to say is the crew on the bridge sees lights on the horizon. It's a ship. It's a ship, and it is close enough, or they believe it possibly really was, close enough for them to turn and come to the Titanic. So there's all sorts of hope right now. The passengers and crew, all of them, have extreme hope for the situation, or they're not aware of it, period. The only people who really know the true dangers of the situation, see, the text just popped up, another ship is spotted. The only people who know the true danger of the situation are Thomas Andrews, Captain Smith, and Bruce Ismay. And it's very interesting to study the psychological impact that this holds on each of them, because they all react very differently throughout the sinking. Ismay has panic attacks, or so it seems, almost breakdowns throughout the sinking. Whereas Andrews, he tries to stay calm and collective, but he completely zones out at one point. Smith disappears for a while. No one knows where. So, it's very interesting to study that psychological effects. But back to the hope. There's all sort of hope going on. People are starting to come out on deck. People think it's a drill. People don't quite understand the gravity of the situation. They see the lifeboats going out and they're told, you're going to need to get in the lifeboats. But you'll be coming back. You'll be back on board by breakfast. You'll be back on board by dawn. Well, then why bother getting in a lifeboat to begin with? The ship's not doing something. The ship's not in danger if we'll be back on board soon. So there's a lot of hope that the situation is not serious. On the other hand, some people see the ship on the horizon. The general concept of the time was that if a ship started to sink, her lifeboats were not needed to hold the entire capacity of the ship, which is why Titanic was not needed to carry enough lifeboats for everyone. The idea was, every ship has a telegraph right now, or at least most of them do, so the Atlantic Ocean is so densely populated with ships going back and forth between North America and Europe and Africa and South America that you have any trouble, you call for help, rescue's going to be there really quickly. The lifeboats are only intended to be ferries between the two ships, and both ships would launch their lifeboats. If the Olympic pulled up alongside the Titanic, the Olympic and the Titanic would launch their lifeboats, and they'd go back and forth, getting everyone off the Titanic. So the mindset of rescue arriving via telegraph is actually well known among the passengers, and the lights on the horizon make them think if there is danger, that ship knows. That ship is already on its way, and look how close it is. The Titanic feels stable. She's not going to go down anytime soon. And there's lights 9-10 miles away. We're going to be fine. We also just got our first successful response to our distress calls. The Mount Temple, the SS Mount Temple, has received Titanic's distress calls and says, we are aware of your situation, we're telling our captain now. The Mount Temple was actually one of the first ships to turn to the Titanic, but as far as I'm aware, she never told the Titanic she was coming. So even in the wireless room, they don't even know the ship's sinking yet. They just know, we've had trouble, she's flooding, but she's not going to sink. So when ships are coming, they'll hear that this ship is 5 hours away, 6 hours away. Okay, that's fine. Ship's not going to sink, it's just damaged. But when Captain Smith hears that a ship is 4 hours away, which the Carpathia was, when Captain Smith hears that this ship is 150, 200 miles away, he knows that's not possible. In Captain Smith's mind, the only ship that can save the Titanic right now are those lights on the horizon. And I'm sure that is what Andrews is thinking, and I'm sure that is what Ismay is thinking. And as the officers realize this, they start thinking the same thing as well. The lifeboats, as you are about to see, are swung out, one by one, out over the side of the ship into loading position. You're going to start to see that. So crew would be all over the deck. The steam would be deafening. And out of the virtue of mercy, I made it not so loud. Because trust me, it would be so deafening. And annoying, too. I tried going at full volume, and I could not bear it. Because for an hour, steam blasting at loud volume, you guys would hate me. And I don't want you guys to hate me. I want you to buy the game when it's done. So, steam would be deafening right now. Crew would be all over the deck. They'd be shouting at each other. Whistles would be blowing. The cranes for the cranks for the davits would be swinging out and clanking, and the lifeboats would be banging around, and all sorts of sounds going. It's no wonder that none of the passengers want to go out on deck. And on top of that, it is freezing cold. The air is frigid. No one wants to go outside. The ship inside is warm. The music is playing. It's comfortable, it's dark, it's night, everyone's tired. Most people were woken up. So, lifeboats being swung out is, you just groan at it. If you're even aware, if you look out the windows and see the lifeboats being swung out, it's just annoying. Because it means you're going to have to go out there, you're going to have to get in a lifeboat. And in the beginning of the sinking, there was a huge hesitancy among the passengers to get in. Which is one of the main reasons why so many of the early lifeboats went away half full. There were a lot of worries among the crew about loading the lifeboats. The lifeboats had been tested, the davits were tested, and there was actually a lifeboat drill when it was in Southampton. A lot of people like to bring up the lifeboat drill being canceled on Sunday, the day of the sinking. They like to blame that, and they're like, oh, if only they went through with that drill, everyone would have been prepared. No, they wouldn't have. It would have more than likely have been a repeat of the drill they did in Southampton, in which case they launched one lifeboat, maybe two lifeboats. Passengers just watch. No one really participates. So, lifeboat drills wouldn't have helped them. There's an extreme hesitancy, and the thoughts among the crew are the cranes might not be able to hold the weight. They flex when they were lowering a full weight of a lifeboat with people. The cranes are flexing. There's also the concern that the lifeboats themselves structurally would not be able to hold it up. And there was a concern that they would snap under the weight. So the thoughts were, no one's boarding the lifeboats anyway, at least get them into the water, and if the ship goes down, people can swim to them. Or they can pick up more people. Or, better yet, we can open up the entrance doors on the side of the ship, lower rope ladders down, order the lifeboats to row to these doors, and people can get loaded from the ladders. So that's the mindset going on right now. That's what they're planning. Now, it's still a significant amount of time before even the first lifeboat gets launched. It takes a very long time for them to get anywhere near enough people to occupy the boats. Plus, they waited. They wanted confirmation from the captain, or at least the chief officer, that these lifeboats can be launched. I mean, you're putting people into the water in complete darkness. That's a big risk, and the ship still feels stable. So to be standing on the deck and know, okay, I'm going to be casting out all of these passengers out into that darkness, into that cold, in the middle of the night, can you please give me a confirmation that you really want me to do this? So they were very hesitant. I believe it was Pittman who was walking around, and he would not launch a lifeboat without confirmation. I believe also Lowe and Boxhall were not doing... No, Lowe was still asleep, sorry. Boxhall was not going to launch it. Ismay was starting to really panic at this point, because he knows the lifeboat situation. He knows there's not enough lifeboats for everyone on board. Again, they were meant to be ferries, not hold the full capacity. So he was yelling at these officers saying, you gotta get this lifeboat away, because he was having these nervous breakdowns that these lifeboats have to be gotten away as quickly as possible, because you never know when the ship's going to drop out. So he was yelling at them saying, let's get those boats away. And they yelled back. The officers yelled back and said, not until we have confirmation. And it took a few minutes for them to get confirmation. Yes, I was just, yep. Titanic has now gotten response from the Carpathia. Carpathia wakes up. The operator comes online and says, he doesn't say anything yet. He tunes in, and he actually hears Cape Race, which was a land base in Newfoundland, Canada. And it's transmitting to the Titanic. A lot of ships had to relay messages. You could send a message around the world via telegraph. Not by your own telegraph. You have to send it to a distant telegraph position, and then they forward it for you, and then they forward it, all within their own ranges. So it was very common among ships at the time that they would receive a wireless telegram from a land base addressed to another ship, and one ship would pick up that message and say, I'm forwarding this from Cape Race to the Titanic. So it's hearing these messages from Cape Race. Of course, Titanic can also hear Cape Race because it has a phenomenal telegraph, but Carpathia doesn't quite know this. Harold Cottam is the operator of the Carpathia. He hears Cape Race messaging, and as soon as Cape Race ends, he messages John Phillips on the Titanic, and says, I just got this message from the Cape Race position. They're trying to contact you. Then they're interrupted. He's interrupted by Phillips, who blasts back, ignoring his own message, and says, come at once, we have struck a berg. It's a CQD, old man. So he gives the position, and Cottam on the Carpathia responds and says, should I tell my captain? And Phillips on the Titanic says, absolutely, yes. Come at once, we are sinking. Cottam rushes off onto the bridge. He runs out onto the bridge, and he steps out there, and he comes to the officer on watch. I forget the guy's name. I forget the guy's name. He comes out to the officer on watch and says, I have this distress call from the Titanic. She is sinking. The officer laughs. Come on, that's a prank. One of the significant problems at the time, credit to Bill Souter on this anecdote, is they were getting a lot of prank telegrams. Oh, we have distress. Please come and help us. Because these telegrams are almost untraceable. They pretty much are. So a lot of people were getting a hold of their own transmitters or borrowing others and sending out prank messages, either distress calls or fake news to reporters. So when the officers on watch heard the Titanic, of all ships, on its first voyage, is sinking, come on, really? So...
humans never change.
Yes, even back then. So they laugh him off. Bride, on the other hand, Cottam on the other hand takes it very seriously. And he's like, you know what, I'm going to the captain. And he barges into the captain's room, wakes him up, and says, distress call from the Titanic. The officer comes in and says, sorry, I apologize for this. He should have knocked. I shouldn't have let him come in. But before he can say this, the captain of the Carpathia takes it very seriously as well. And he orchestrates a phenomenal action of waking the ship up, getting it under power, and getting his crew to attention. He orders full steam ahead, wake every shift of crew, of all jobs, stokers, deck officers, stewards, cooks, get hot meals on, get coffee going, get soup going, clear out every available cabin, prepare every public space as a dormitory, get all the blankets, get the ship's doctor. What?
Lifeboat 7 just launched.
Oh yeah, it launched a little bit ago.
Okay. Get the ship's doctor, string running lights out, and get to the Titanic as quickly as possible. So, Carpathia finally confirms they are on their way. This is the first ship that actually has a chance of helping to come. Lifeboat 7, the very first lifeboat to leave the Titanic, has just launched. Matt, take it from here, Chiefy. I will be right back. Excuse me.
Okay, sure. Yeah, Lifeboat
Quick,
7.
I just wanted to say that we've hit 405 listeners, which might be the most we've ever had. I don't
I
know.
think so, yeah. All right. Lifeboat 7 is the first to be launched. I kind of was making fun of the one Titanic program that I saw people commenting about in the chat. But this boat, I think it said in the little notes, these lifeboats are these first boats that are getting launched. Boats 7, 5, and 3 are the boats that can hold 65 persons. And some of these boats are being lowered with as few as 23, 28. I think 7 had 28 people on board. But these first boats are all first-class passengers. And now, like Lifeboat 4 is being lowered, but it was lowered to A deck. We'll talk about that in a second. But Lifeboat 7, lowered by Murdoch. Murdoch's going to lower most of the boats on the starboard side, and I think he pops over to the port side too. Murdoch lowers Lifeboat 7 as soon as he can. He fills it up with first-class women and children, and famously, when he can't find any other women to get into the boat, he sticks in men as well. First-class men enter Lifeboat 7. So he fills up the boats with whoever he can find at a certain point. While on the other side, on the port side, I think we'll discuss this more once Lightoller actually lowers some boats. He fills it up with only women and children and then lowers the boats. So here you can see Lifeboat 4, yeah, they've lowered it to A deck, thinking, okay, we can just fill it from A deck, the large promenade deck there, but unfortunately there are windows in the way.
Two things, Lifeboat 5 is just launched and the D-deck door is about to open.
Yeah. Lifeboat 5, Murdoch and Lower working together to get those starboard boats down as fast as they can at this point. Here it is. And since Lightoller messed up, this is basically how I view it. Since Lightoller made a mistake with Boat 4, he decided to open the D-deck door down below to take passengers from the hatches down there. So we'll discuss that more once the ship floods a little bit and gets lower in the water.
I'm back.
I'm back.
I'm back, yeah.
Pretty much we badmouthed Lightoller a little bit.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
And D-deck door just opened, and yeah, if you want to discuss that.
I want to address that real quick. I like picking on Lightoller. I apologize because I know he has a lot of fans out there. I don't mean to be controversial here. I like picking on him. He saved lives, absolutely, but I'm just not a huge fan. And when I'm not a huge fan of someone, I pick on him. So.
That goes back to reading his testimony and his book. We don't need to get into that, but yeah.
Yeah. It's very...
The time in Titanic, by the way, is 1:45. It's 12:45 a.m.
Oh. And
the time in the video is 1:06 and 30 seconds. And you can see Lifeboat 7 has reached the water. There's a little note on the screen. Aft watertight doors are opened to give access for the pumping crew. And you can see Lifeboat 3 is being lowered still and is about to have some difficulties.
One of the other things...
Oh, 5, sorry.
Yes, 5 has some serious difficulties coming up. Mm-hmm. One of the other things that I want to just say about this video real quick, I made the volumes kind of low with the intention of you guys listening to our podcast at the same time. If you guys are having a hard time hearing us over the video, lower the volume on the video. It will get loud at the end, and I no longer considered our podcast. It gets very loud at the end. I'm just warning you guys in advance. All right, Lifeboat 5.
Lifeboat 5's falls are slipping.
Yep. James Cameron showed that in his movie too, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, they also have an incident. I think this boat also has the "get that plug in or you're gonna sink" story to it.
From Lowe, yes.
Yeah,
Lowe was lowering the boat, and Pittman was in it, and all these lifeboats have plugs in them, so that when rain comes down, it doesn't pool in the ship, in the boat, and it just drains out. Here we go. Wait for it. About to see something very flashy go off. I'm interrupting myself, I know. First rocket fired by Officer Boxhall. So, they all have these plugs in the bottom, and no one thought to plug them when the lifeboats were being launched. They all just forgot. So the lifeboat's going down the falls and it's getting closer to the water, and everyone starts panicking. There's a hole in the bottom of the boat. What do we do? So they start trying to plug it. They can't find the plug. And Pittman shouts up to Lowe and says, "Wait, stop lowering. We gotta plug this hole." And Lowe, still mad at Pittman for not waking him, because Pittman was in charge of waking everybody, says, "That's your own damn problem," and continues lowering.
Basically, yeah, he just yells it from above.
And then he mic drops and walks away.
Mm-hmm.
So we just had our first rocket fire by Officer Boxhall. Boxhall did not fire all of the rockets. He only really did it in the beginning, I believe. But it's now that the quartermasters on the back deck start to think, hey, I think there's something going on that we should probably be aware of. Yeah, here the text comes up.
Mm-hmm.
They saw the iceberg go by. They thought it was a sail from a schooner which they passed. They're seeing lifeboats go into the water. They saw all the lifeboats get swung out. They see crowds of people starting to go up on the deck. Now they just saw a rocket. Okay, now it's time to act. So they telephone the bridge and say, "What's going on? We see boats, we see rockets, what's going on?" Vauxhall answers and says, we're sinking. Could you please bring more rockets?" So they abandon the back deck. They go to the rocket lockers. They pick them up, and they bring them up. And these two quartermasters basically take over for launching rockets as soon as they come up there. Fun little fact. I don't know how many of you observant viewers out there noticed, but that rocket was red. Do you want to address this?
Oh, Kyle did.
I don't know how to do white rockets.
No, that's
I know, that's how he addressed it.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah.
No, this is true.
Yeah.
Actually, you do know.
But-
Um,
You did it before.
I did it before, but I forgot how I did it.
That was a year ago.
But it
It's
doesn't
not
matter
important now.
anyway. The rockets have actually been proven to be different colors. We know for a fact, again, thanks to good old JC, that the Titanic had colored rockets. Now, there's no way of really knowing, was a red rocket fired first? What was the sequence of the colors being launched? We just know it was not exclusively white.
There are multiple colors, since we found that nice collection of rockets bundled on the sea floor. And I think there's 19 out of 36 missing. Doesn't mean that 19 were fired. Some could have fallen off, but there's different
Rolled away.
colors. They're all labeled.
Just rolled away. By the way, this is this is the best angle right now to see the ship's lights on the horizon. You can see the Californian out there. We exaggerated the brightness a little bit. Remember, we're already a little too bright. But we also made the lights on the horizon a little brighter too. Remember, this is a video. This is a presentation. This is symbolism. This is so that you guys get to see it and so you can really make it out. Because if it's just a flicker out there, no one's going to pick up on it. No one's going to appreciate it.
Someone just quickly asked, because we had a little note about the stokers who rushed up the grand staircase. They came up from below, and one first class passenger who was also in the area just suddenly saw, the inner workings of the ship for the first time, coming up from the bowels of hell from the great heart. She realized that now this was her signal that the great heart of the ship had stopped beating and something was seriously wrong. Seeing all these people coming up, trying to get away from the dangers below, and that's what really startled her. Not the actual crew members, but this was symbolism for her too.
It was also because they were filthy.
Oh yeah, well yeah, they're.
And here they came running through.
It's the black gang, quote unquote. They're black-faced, group of men.
Yeah, because they're covered in soot.
Yes.
So they all come running up through first class.
Messing up the linoleum.
It's not so much that she was offended that all of these.
No, she wasn't offended.
No, it's like something serious if these people are running through here.
Mm-hmm.
Someone had asked a question which I was going to address, and then you threw me off. I forget what the question was. Yes, the steam is off. I forget the question.
What time is it? It's 12:52 a.m. I think. Did it just say that boat 3 was being lowered?
9 was lowered to A deck.
9 was. Oh yeah, there it is.
There goes another rocket, by the way. Oh, someone asked, were stokers hired by the White Star Line? Difficult. It's not a difficult question. It's interestingly worded. Yeah, they were hired by the White Star Line, but they weren't White Star Line employees permanently. They were employees of the White Star Line for the voyage. These stokers would work on any ship. If the Lusitania was the next one in port by the Cunard Line, a rival of the White Star Line, they'd go work on that too. They'd jump onto whatever ship was hiring. And it's the same with the orchestra, I believe. So here's the Titanic. She's really starting to list forward. Stern is starting to come out of the air. You also have to keep in mind the center of gravity of the ship is not the center of the ship. So the stern doesn't really start rising out of the water until later. The bow sinks before the stern rises. And that's because the center of gravity is really about where the engines are, a little forward of that, which is just about between the third and fourth funnel.
Quick time update 1:14:15.
And I think an interior view is coming up.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
there's boat 9 lower to A deck. That's what they want to do with boat number 6, but unfortunately the enclosed promenade prevents that.
4.
4, sorry. And well, it prevents it for 6 as well.
Well, yeah. The lifeboats were designed to be loaded from A deck, from the open promenade deck, which is what happens with the aft starboard boats. So that's what you start to see. Here we have our first interior view. I just mentioned the Strausses, by the way. I mentioned it in the text, when I wrote the text, I mean. But everyone knows the story of Mr. Strauss, an old first-class gentleman, Civil War veteran, actually. And he's trying to get his wife into a lifeboat. And she says, "Please, Ida, get in the boat." And she says, "We've been together for many years. Where you go, I go. So I'm staying with you." It's a very famous scene. It's true. It really happened. But one little thing that I find very interesting that's often overlooked is her maid was standing right there. She would have been part of the conversation too. And Mrs. Strauss then encouraged the maid, Ellen Bird, to get into the lifeboat, and she did. And that is why we know the story happened. This, just a quick personal note, this sequence right here, and the one before it, which had the knob in the foreground, I think those are my two favorite sinking shots we have ever done. I think the water just looks phenomenal. At least in those two shots. This is okay.
Yeah, it's just okay.
Yeah. It's pixelated around there. Gotta fix that. While we are continuing on in this little slow section, there's something I wanted to address, and while I've got this huge audience right now, I might as well at the moment. We did our fundraiser, and we still have our donations button on our website for PayPal. People are asking, can they still donate? Yes, we are still accepting donations. In fact, we just got a nice, generous one only 5 minutes ago, so thank you for that. But we are not actively encouraging people to go do that. I'm not telling you guys to do this. We're not making fundraising posts. Right now, we are seeking investors to back this project all the way to the end. What the donations do is they help us keep working until we find that investor. They help us cover certain expenses. We still have some money from the fundraiser. We still have a decent amount from the fundraiser. And that money is going towards still working, still getting things done, buying things as they come up, and helping us find investors. We will more than likely not be doing another fundraiser on a large scale, as the investors are simply the way to go. Because it's a very large goal. Our goal of $250,000 for the last fundraiser is not comparable to the actual budget that we need. That's all I will say. So here we get to see.
Quick note.
Yes.
A quick note on video time. In the video we are 1 hour, 17 minutes, and 57, 58, 59, 18 minutes, 18:01, 02. Yep.
So. Another quick comment. Just had another rocket fire up. You'll hear it as it happens, even if it's out of frame. I'm actually really proud of the view count we got. I mean, this video only went up today, and I checked it about 3 hours after it was posted. It was almost 3,000 views. Right now, I see it at nearly 4,500. I'm sure if I refreshed, it will be a lot higher than that, but I don't want to refresh because I'd lose the time in the video, and so would you guys, so please don't do it. So, and we've also got 850 likes, 5 dislikes. Why do people dislike it? I'm sorry. I've been at YouTube for a while, so when I see someone dislike something, it's just like, come on, really?
Some don't like the resolution and all that. So,
oh, come on. It would have been uploaded next week if it was 1080. Anyway, sorry. I'm getting off topic. Now we're wrapping. What?
Nothing. Inside joke. Okay. Ooh, the band moved to the grand staircase landing on the boat deck.
Yes, they left the lounge.
Not outside the boat deck.
No, not outside.
But
They were on the inside.
Not outside, inside, where there's a piano. Imagine that. The band would play where there's a piano, where they usually play.
Now we're getting a really nice view over the well deck, looking back at the bridge and the forward end of the superstructure. This is pretty cool. We've got our first lifeboats making their way out, and I just really like the close-up shots, especially of the forward section. Cinematography.
Thank you.
Yes.
There's a lot of detail in the forward part, yeah.
Yeah. Also cinemagraphically, especially towards the end. Oh, we're back inside the ship.
Oh, it startled me.
That's the very bottom of.
What is this?
That's the very bottom of the grand
no.
staircase, and we just made our way into the Turkish bath cooling room. You guys got to see that in the demo.
Yeah.
Oh,
What kind of fool is this? What is he doing down here? Why is he
why
doing
are you
this?
looking around? Get out of there. Quick shout out to my friend Park Stevenson. This area is his baby on the ship.
Yeah.
And that's the first time he gets to see it flooding, I think. So I expect a text
Maybe.
of shock in a moment.
Didn't Cameron lose an trophy in there?
Yeah. He did lose one, yes. It's still there to this day, but let's not talk about that.
We're still crossing over to the other side of the ship, the port side of the ship.
Any lifeboats away yet? Thanks to the Lightheller? I don't think so. Lightheller Captain Smith's trying to launch boats on this side too, actually.
I got that text from Parks.
Oh, you did? Good.
Yes. Hey, I'm sharing a private text, but he says the furniture should be bobbing.
So, yes, it's been a teak. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, what we did was we didn't have time to animate the furniture bobbing up and down, so we just recorded it as deep as possible before they could float up. And yeah, they probably would. They already would be floating up, but.
Oh yeah. Also, the lighting was baked in. If I moved them, they would get like super bright, and I didn't know how to solve that this time.
We're not syncing things yet in the game, so yeah. I think it's 1 a.m. Lifeboat 8 should be lowering away.
Lifeboat 8
Oh,
leaves with 27 people on board.
There it goes.
We actually had a number of laughs over Lifeboat 8. Over the course of the night, it rose over 2 miles away. Matt, why don't you tell it? You tell it. You say it funnier.
I just like thinking. Well, Lifeboat 8 is gosh, you just imagine that this is the first boat away from the port side of the ship after all the struggles that has been going on with this side. You know, they lower lifeboat 6 down, it can't do anything, and so they start lowering Lifeboat 8, and it's the lifeboat with the Countess of Ross in it. So, and she takes quote unquote command of the boat. She's at the tiller. So in my mind, I imagine her just giving commands like, okay, let's row away as far as we can towards that light. They're heading towards the Californian, or they're heading towards the light in the horizon, which is apparently the Californian, and they just keep rowing for it. 2 miles away they get, so they can't even see the Titanic very well when it sinks. But the funny thing is, they're thus rowing north, and the rescue ship, the Carpathia, is coming from the south. So yes, they got far away from the sinking ship, but in turn they became the last lifeboat picked up from the Carpathia because they got so far away.
I can't help but laugh in a very dry way that they put so much effort in. They get 2 miles away. That's more than any other lifeboat. They put so much effort in to getting to the lights on the horizon. The lights disappear. Now they're here 2 miles in the middle of nowhere. And then about an hour or two later, the lights appear in the opposite direction.
Opposite direction, yeah.
And then they just have to wait, and they're the last lifeboat to be picked up at 8 a.m. What is that? That's 7 hours after being launched?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I think it was... yes.
Was that the lifeboat that lit torches?
No, I think that's 9. That was lit the oars. I think that was 9 that made makeshift torches, yeah.
Alright, well, when we get to that point...
9 or 11, I'm not sure which one, but yeah, it's the starboard boat.
Okay. Oh, we're back on the inside now. This was a screenshot.
Water's coming up on you.
This was a screenshot we played with a long time ago just for fun. And then we actually lost the animation. So just for the sake of this video, I asked Kyle to recreate that screenshot. Yeah, so water's trickling up. it actually rises fast on the inside. The ship sinks fast. Oh, and here, this is the first ever. This was the first ever water animation we did. I think this even preceded the reception room sinking by like 2 hours. So this is very low quality, but I guess it's not bad. I don't mean to knock it, but still, this is our earliest one.
How dare you?
It looks like the frame rate's bad. It probably is.
It is. It may have been slowed down or sped up and slowed down probably.
No, this is the natural rate at which it was recorded. But hey, that doesn't warrant a thumbs down on YouTube, people. Back outside. Every time, whenever I watch this back and I see an interior shot, and then we cut back to the exterior, I just imagine like Adventure Out of Time music cueing. Like you just watch the cutscenes of the sinking, and now you're back on the boat deck, and it's the dramatic 8-bit music you hear, or whatever bit that was. So now we've got Lifeboat, what is that, Lifeboat 3?
Lifeboat 3 is right there. Lifeboat 1 is about to launch because it is 1:05 a.m. right now-ish. And time in the video is 1:25:45 right now. And it is 1:05, so that boat with 12 people should be starting to head down.
It's about to hit 1:26 in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, it's 1:26 in the video.
That bow is getting closer and closer to the water.
Mm-hmm.
The rockets are still firing. The Morse lamp would also be signaling, and we really wanted to put the Morse lamp animation in this, but we just didn't have the time. So they would be doing everything they possibly could to contact that ship on the horizon, because the high-up crew knows that ship is the only hope they have. They know there aren't enough lifeboats, and they know no other ship is close enough to save them. So the telegraph is firing away. They know about the Californian.
There it goes.
Lifeboat 1 is lowering away. The telegraph operators know about the Californian. They were talking to it just the evening before. They're firing the Morse lamps, they're firing rockets, they're doing everything they can to get that ship's attention. And that ship sees them. The Californian sees them. They see the lights, they see the rockets.
Oh, just a second, Tom. To interrupt you, if you're looking at the lifeboat, you can see that it just got stuck in our video. And that's because this is an emergency cutter, and it's always ready to be deployed at a moment's notice. But there are 2 wires that hold it down to the ship's side, while it's sailing. And as they were lowering it, they realized they needed to release the wires, to let the boat launch. And they didn't. So the ship got stuck on its way down. Or the boat got stuck alongside the ship, and that's what we're showing here.
So, yes, thank you, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to animate the wires, and we were going to, but, again, not enough time. So the Californian on the horizon sees the Titanic. It sees its lights, it sees its rockets, it even sees a little bit of a flicker, which they thought could be a Morse lamp. It even, some of the crew said they even saw it look like the Titanic was listing forward.
There was another rocket.
And slowly disappearing. But there were so many different things which made them decide we're not going to do this. They really should have. But I honestly don't know if that's just hindsight, and because we all know the truth, or if they were justified. Because they did have excuses. The rockets were not following a regular interval. And they said regular intervals would have gotten their attention. It was irregular. They thought they might have been company signals. The fact that it was multicolored threw them off as well. But I do believe, and this is my opinion here, but I do believe it is inexcusable to not let their captain know. The captain was asleep, so they didn't tell him. It was inexcusable to not tell the wireless operator, check and see if something's up. Interestingly enough, one of the junior officers, was friends with the wireless operator on the Californian. And he had been learning how to use the telegraph and was slowly picking up Morse code. So what happened was, this officer went into the wireless room, because it was his hobby now, and he saw the operator was asleep. Cyril Evans was asleep on the Californian, which is okay. He was off duty. They didn't need 24-hour watch. He goes in, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to check out, see what's going on, just for fun. And he turns the telegraph on, he gets the receiver going, and he hears Titanic's distress calls. The Californian, the lights on the horizon, actually hear Titanic's Morse code calling for help. But he didn't understand the code. He didn't understand the Morse. So he just said, oh, people are talking, but I'm going to just leave it. And he turns the radio back off. It's very interesting. The Californian, and I won't dwell too much on the Californian, but the Californian had the opportunity to be the biggest heroes in the world. They had the chance. That captain would have won medals left and right. He would have been an international hero. He would have been all over the papers. He would have received commendations. He would have been promoted to the top captain of his line. He would have been one of the captains that the other lines sought after and fought over, and would come up to him and say, I will give you this salary, which is much better than what you're earning now. He could have had all of that, and so would all of the officers on board. So would a lot of the crew. They would have all been heroes. But they just sat there and watched. You see that D-deck door is getting a lot closer. You see the windows actually relatively rapidly disappearing on E-deck.
Yeah, it's taking a bit of a plunge at the moment.
Yeah, that's because it's surging forward. Now you see the windows are actually slowing down. It just surged there. Water just got over one of the bulkheads. Or one of the bulkheads collapsed. Now that D-deck door... That D-deck door is now getting a lot closer to the water line.
Molly Brown is on this boat, I believe.
And she's about to get off.
Yep, she's getting out of
She's about to be unsinkable.
Yep. So, Molly Brown actually had, well, Margaret, as she was called at the time, is famous. I won't go into any backstory about her. She was a first-class passenger, but she had no intention of getting on that boat. She was encouraging others to get in. She's like, you got to get in there. Come on, step on. And she would encourage other passengers, women, children, all classes, to just get on the boat. And I believe she was the last person put onto that boat, apart from the crew, and Putin later. But the officer basically picked her up and said, get in. So there's Lifeboat 6, with her in it, lowering down to the water.
I think at this point there's only two crew members on board, Hitchens and
Hitchens.
Look out!
Hitchens was the quartermaster on the bridge. He was holding the wheel at the time of the collision. That doesn't place blame on him. I want to be very clear about that.
Well, then there's someone else in the boat that blame could be placed upon is Lookout Fleet.
Yeah, well, mistaken.
Possible. Exactly. That's what I mean. Yes.
So there are the only crew of Lifeboat 6 right now are two very central people to the collision.
Yeah.
So now here they both are.
And Margaret Brown is realizing that they're the only two on board.
Oh yeah, she really took a man. She really had it together on that boat. That boat was kept together because of her. And not only did she encourage so many people to get onto that boat and actively push them in and do all of that stuff without any intentions of saving herself, at least not yet. But now, as that boat is going down, she's looking around and she's like, wait a second, we've only got 2 sailors on board. We've only got 2 men. Now, this was back then when it was expected that if there's going to be rowing, it's going to be the men in most cases, which I guess in modern times is seen as sexist. But back then, it's just how it was. So she's looking around. She's like, wait, we've only got 2 men to operate this boat. We don't have any other crew. So at a certain point, and I think it happened now, she shouts up to Officer Lightaller. She shouts up to Lightaller and says, we've only got 2 sailors on board. Lightaller looks around and says, is there any other crew nearby? And there were no crew apart from himself and the ones on the falls. And finally, first-class passenger Arthur Puchin, a Canadian yachtsman, steps up and he says, I could go. And Lightaller asks, well, are you a sailor? Are you in the Navy? And Puchin says, I'm a yachtsman. And Lightaller says, okay, climb down the falls and you can go. This was the only adult male passenger that Lightaller would allow into a lifeboat that night. I might actually have a text box come up for that. So he swings down the falls, he climbs down, he gets down there with some real struggling. It's not easy to climb down ropes. Come on, we all had gym class. He climbs on down there, he gets there, see, there's the text, and he takes over. Now, Puchin would take an oar, and Quartermaster Hitchens would take the tiller. I believe Frederick Fleet took an oar as well. But Margaret Brown really stepped up and took an oar, and she also encouraged a lot of the ladies to take the oars. And over the course of the nights, Margaret Brown basically took over command from Hitchens, who was pouting. And I believe this was the only lifeboat to be commanded by a passenger. Oh, apart from 8 with the Countess of Roths. Am I correct with that?
You can see California at the horizon there.
Yep. This is a very common perspective. A lot of passengers in first class gathered on the A-deck promenade and pointed the lights on the horizon out to each other. I believe it was Archibald Gracie.
A lot of the prominent passengers in first class were waiting right here for Lifeboat 4 for the longest time to get ready to go.
Yeah, the Astors were standing right there, just waiting.
The Astors and the Wideners are just right here. There's Lifeboat 4.
It's very interesting. You do not see 4 go down for a long time. It could have been the first boat to leave, and yet it's one of the last instead, because it was basically forgotten about. Lightaller said, lower it down to A deck, someone go down and open the windows and load it up. No one went down and loaded it. So it was soon after that he just happened to glance down over the side, and he's like, oh, wow, 4 is still here. We got to take care of that. But that doesn't come for a while. Anyway, could you guys take it from here for a moment? I will be right back. I need more water.
I think I wanted to one final thing about the story with Lifeboat 6 and when Puchin got into the boat. I'm not sure if this is completely accurate, but I believe he fell into the boat at the end, and he dropped his wallet into the sea. His wallet fell out of his pocket, and I think his wallet was recovered from the ocean floor.
That's true.
I think. Is it true?
I believe so, yeah.
I think I saw it in a documentary years ago, though, but I wanted to ask that question to somebody important, but I never have. Look, there's Lifeboat 8 right there trying to get away from the Titanic.
They're just desperately trying to row away
as fast as they can.
Oh, look, they're rowing in the direction of the lights. Oh, rocket.
Another rocket, yeah. That rocket would be launched by, that was from the port side, right? So we have Boxall was firing rockets for the longest time, and then Quartermaster Rowe was firing rockets as well. He brought off the rockets, took over for a while. They're going to abandon eventually and get into the respective boats in the forward side of the ship. The time is 1:17 a.m. on the Titanic, and we're at the 1:38:45 mark right now.
For anyone who's just coming into the video or who wants to know, I'll do a quick count here. The video is at 1 hour, 38 minutes. No, hold on. Let me redo this. 1 hour, 39 minutes. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And this is the point where the port list begins.
There's going to be a little bit of a lull in the lifeboat launching, too.
Don't worry, I am back now.
Okay, good. I believe the action on the boat deck has moved aft, as most of the forward boats on the starboard side have been launched, and the collapsibles now have to be put into the davits. And, oh yes, the Titanic is beginning to slowly list to port. Over the course of the night, she's going to increase to about 10 degrees before her plunge. And that's going to hinder the lowering of the boats quite a bit. On the port side, it's going to create like a gap of 3 feet between the deck and the lifeboats, and that gap is going to be significant enough to make passengers not want to cross the threshold. One woman is going to actually have a lot of trouble trying to get into lifeboat 10, and she's going to fall between the lifeboat and the ship, and passengers on A deck are going to have to pull her back to safety, or she'll perhaps fall into the sea. And while on the starboard side, some of the lifeboats, especially collapsible, I always mix up which ones are which. Collapsible C, I think, is C's on the starboard side, right?
C is the starboard, Ismay, yeah.
Yeah. Collapsible C, it rubs against the side of the hull while it's being launched because of the port list.
I've got
We'll
something
talk
to
about
say.
that.
To add to that. Someone had asked about why are we listing to port. Why were we listing to starboard earlier? Why are we now listing to port? Park Stevenson has an excellent article about this, which he and Ken Marshall and I'm sure a few others that I can't recall at the moment did extensive research on this to figure out what was up with the Titanic in its listing. And if you guys want to read it, I actively encourage it. It's in the Commutator, the Titanic Historical Society magazine. I think you might be able to find that online. I don't know. But anyway, Titanic had a natural 3-degree list to port for its entire voyage. And the reason for this was because of the coal fire. They had to shift the coal from the starboard side to the port side. To put that fire out. So Titanic was leaning over to the left for most of the voyage. So when the iceberg broke open the side of the ship, water naturally started flooding in on that side faster than it could reach the port side, so it started pulling the ship over to starboard. Almost every ship in history capsizes before it goes down. Costa Concordia, the Britannic, the Lusitania, the Andrea Doria, just to name a few. They all capsize. But Titanic was leaking on the side against which it already was leaning. So it starts going over to that side, it starts leaning over to starboard, and it makes it to about 6 degrees over to starboard. And then the water reaches the fireman's passage, and it now has easy access to the port side and starts flooding the port side. And now the weight on the port side of the coal starts to be a factor again. And it starts leaning over on that side more again. Because now it's going back to the balance it had pre-collision, which was 3 degrees over to port. And then over the course of the sinking, that natural list to port starts increasing more and more as the water wants to go to the lowest point in the ship, which increases faster and faster and faster until it goes down. The reason it does not capsize is because it had that perfect counterbalance in the beginning. Now the rockets are still firing off, and if you have your sound on, I don't know if you guys just muted it, I just muted the video, but if you do listen to the sound, we tried to accurately replicate the sound of the rockets firing. A lot of people think the loud boom was up in the air, but it was really louder when being fired off from the bridge. So we have it launch up, goes up into the air, and then it just fizzles up in the air like it probably would have. But the loud boom is the launch. And fun fact, I just used a World War II bazooka sound effect, which I modified.
Do you feel like a news reporter right now, Tom?
I don't know. I feel like my throat is dry from talking.
Well, I mean, like it feels like you're watching a live event and you're just reporting on it, like we're newscasters almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although if we're reporting this live, we'd have much less idea what's going on.
That's true. But still,
Tom,
that's what
I
it feels like.
think there's a maybe it was an explosion or a torpedo. I don't know. Some people said it was an
And
iceberg.
then everything we say will lead to conspiracy theories down the road.
Yes.
So, someone says, does the port door being open contribute to the list? Almost definitely. Although it was already starting to go down to the port by that time.
Briefly, Lifeboat 16 was launched. I just want to discuss that boat because we're discussing lifeboats. I think this is the only boat that Moody launches solo by himself. Usually, it's all the other officers team up to launch lifeboats, but Moody took command of this aft port boat and lowered it. And he filled it up. What was that?
This was the junior most officer too.
Yes, it was. And I think he filled it up with close to about, I forgot what it said on the thing, so I have to quickly open my notes. 16 was filled, but he filled up with 53 people. That's the first boat to leave I think it's the first boat to leave with more than 40 people, I want to dare say.
I've got a friend who's listening.
So they know things are getting serious. Yeah.
I've got a friend who's listening who I haven't had a time to reply to his text, but he keeps asking about Lowe. If Lowe is awake, because he knows the story. Yes, we already mentioned that Lowe was launching boats 3 with Pittman in it, but we left out a very interesting part of the story. I told you no one woke him, and then I told you he was launching this boat. The transition. What happened was he hears banging outside of his cabin as he's trying to sleep. My assumption is that someone's elbow or something or a rope was banging up against his window, and he hears this. He comes out. He looks out his window, and he sees the lifeboats. I just imagine how groggy he would be at the time, and how confused he would be. Middle of the night, lifeboats are swinging out, and no one told him anything. He comes out on deck in his pajamas. He stands there. He looks up and down the deck, forward and aft, and sees the evacuation going. And he's like, why am I always the last to find out about this stuff? He walks back into his cabin, puts his officer uniform on, and grabs a gun.
He's about to have a great night.
Yes, that's the perfect formula right there. It is one thing that will come up later. It's actually about to come up in 2 seconds. It's his own It's his own personal gun, private gun. The higher up officers were issued guns, but not yet. This is his own private gun. Passengers and crew were actually allowed to carry their own guns on the ship without any fear or whatever. And so he had this, and he got it. And now he is firing his pistol to scare off a mob of men, threatening to jump into Lifeboat 14 as it is passing the A-deck promenade. Panic is breaking out on that ship. So, yes, thank you. I just saw one of the comments that scared someone. Putting those gunshots in, I knew that was going to startle people. That's my own little prank. Wait till later. So Lowe is now in charge of Boat 14, and he is lowering away. There was an interesting conversation as 16 and 14 were all being prepared. And Lowe and Moody and a couple of the other officers were in the back preparing these boats. I think Wild was there. I think Captain Smith was there. And Lightaller comes back. And he goes up to Moody and Lowe, who are the 2 lowest ranked officers on the ship. And he says, I want one of you two in at least one of these boats. The reason being is he wants an officer in charge of one of these boats. Because these 4 are all going to be launched at about the same time. So they're probably all going to go off and stick together. So he wants an officer kind of in charge of the flotilla of them. So Moody and Lowe go back and forth. You go, you take this. No, I'll grab one later. Moody and Lowe are young. They're kids. Actually, they're my age. They're 24, I believe. So these are very young guys. And here they are debating who's going to go. I'll grab another lifeboat later, without realizing they are not going to have the opportunity. Moody says, I'll grab a boat later. Lowe says, all right, I'll take this. And Lowe takes boat 14 and lowers away. Now we've just had a few ships say that they are responding, that they are coming. They are on their way to Titanic's position. The Baltic has just confirmed they are coming. The Frankfurt, a German ship, has just confirmed that they are coming. Frankfurt and Phillips have been at each other's throats all night. Not so much arguing, but they're definitely getting on each other's nerves. They've got language barriers. They're not taking each other seriously. So finally the Frankfurt has said, all right, we're coming to you. We're back inside the ship right now. This is old footage, to be honest. This is from our reception room sinking video. But I had to throw it in because this is happening right now. When we did this video, we didn't have the port list. So you're watching this and it's not so noticeable. Or the port list isn't there. And then when we cut to the exterior, it is. Just bear that in mind. We also abbreviate this. You don't watch the whole video. For those of you who are new to our audience here, we have a full real-time video of this room flooding. The whole reception room from when the water really starts coming around the front of the stairs all the way up to the ceiling. It's like a 4 or 5 minute video. It's on our YouTube page if you guys want to check it out later.
We are up to 431 listeners.
Nice. I wonder how many total.
150, 50 seconds, and it is 1:30.
Stop everything. Stop everything. Fantastic book out there, On a Sea of Glass by Tad Fitch and Bill Wormstedt and a few other authors. Oh, sorry, off the top of my head. This
J. Kent
angle,
Layton.
this is basically the cover right here. I mean, this is almost identical to the painting on that cover.
Mm-hmm.
And the officers have just been issued.
Oh, quick, everyone look at boat number 14. That little boat dangling on the side.
Splash.
Off to the right.
Right into the water.
Matt, why don't you tell what happened?
Oh, it's long story short. On top of all the drama that Lowe had to go through with that night, his boat's falls got stuck on the way down, 4 feet above the water, and they decided, let's just cut these and pray to see what happens. And they cut the falls, and they had to go down 4 feet. And it was a 4-foot drop into the sea, and the passengers on that boat did not appreciate that, and they were splashed with the ice cold water. And some people even said that the boat was damaged, possibly because there was a little bit of water in it, which is kind of interesting because 14 was the boat that went back to the wreck site to look for survivors.
Mm. So now the officers have their guns. They had to go get them from Lightaller's cabin. Or was it Murdoch's cabin? It's very confusing because they shuffled the officers right before, and it would have been.
Come on, Blair, it's all your fault.
It would have been in the first officer's cabin, so it was in Murdoch's cabin. But Lightaller was supposed to be the first officer, so he had the key to the locker in the first officer's cabin. So they went in to get the guns from Murdoch's cabin, but Murdoch didn't have the key, so they had to go get Lightaller. They distributed guns. Lifeboat 9 is. What did that say? Launched?
Launch, yeah, with 40 people on board.
I really, cinemagraphically, this shot coming up as we start to rotate around the ship, I just think it's beautiful. In a very chilling way. You see the boats making their way away from the ship. You see the ship just cutting into the water. Another rocket just went off. The smoke is still coming out of funnel number 3.
What boat is that just tried to get away from the ship?
Tried to get away or did get away?
They get away. You just saw on the bottom, in the right side, just sail away.
I don't know. You tell me. You're the boat expert.
Oh, I think it was 3. Oh yeah, 3 decided to also try to do one of the to get to the light on the horizon. So it rode along the front of the ship like that.
Yeah. Another ship just confirmed that they are on their way. Yeah, that view. I think that's a phenomenal view. You see the propellers starting to come out of the water. People conflicted with when the propellers would rise out of the water. They would say on one side of the ship, or some people would say they came out early. Some people would say they didn't pop out until the absolute last few minutes. And you know what the significant factor is? It's which side of the ship you're on. If you're on this side of the ship, the starboard side of the ship, you're seeing those propellers relatively early. In fact, I was spying the blade popping out of the water around maybe 12:20.
Really soon, yeah.
So, but the propellers are just deeper right now on the port side. You wouldn't see them.
Looking at this shot, you get a good sense of scale of the ship and just everything about it. You know, the lights reflecting in the water.
Yes.
Lifeboat. Which lifeboat was that again?
Dangling?
Oh, that's 9.
Yeah, that's 9. Someone asked if the smoke is accurate. Yes, it is. Smoke would be coming out of funnel 3 because that is the boiler. Those are the boiler rooms right now, which are responsible for the ship's electricity. Without them, the ship would black out very soon.
155.05, by the way.
These lifeboats coming down the starboard side are basically scraping up against it because they don't have a vertical clearance to hit the water. So they're pressing up against the ship, while on the other side...
At least boat C did. These might have been a little bit less. We're not sure. People on these boats reported like a list, but they didn't say which direction the list was in.
Well, you can see which way.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Someone asked if we use any of Ken's paintings as references for some of our shots, and we did.
Yeah,
did.
as an homage. Ken is one of our...
Several, I think, actually.
He's one of our consultants, and he's got phenomenal, beautiful paintings. So going through, we got 2 hours and 40 minutes to watch the ship go down. Let's have some fun with the angles. So we do have a few of Ken's paintings recreated. We have a few other paintings recreated. A few shots from a couple films and things like that. So people are asking what this is rendered in. This is the game engine. This is the actual game engine. But
keeping in mind that final graphics will be much better.
Oh yeah, this is like rushed game engine. We have the condensers discharging. What's going on right now is the pumps have been activated. The Titanic has pumps inside, basically to pump out seawater if there's a little leak or if there's something else going on and flooding the inside of the ship. So it's not enough to slow the sinking. Even if they turn them on instantly upon the impact, it is not pumping out at a rate fast enough to save the ship. However, it can slow it down a little bit, and it can buy them a few minutes. And with possible rescue coming, with evacuations being rushed, every minute helps. So what you see there, you can see it just aft of Lifeboat 9 in the water. You can see the starboard condenser pumping out water. And this is going to be a vital central plot point in the coming minutes. Let's not go on to that yet. Now you can really see the props starting to come out. I forget, what time were we at? Oh, there it is. Okay, I was the reason I was asking the time is
1:37.
Yeah, the reason I asked the time is because I wanted to know, did the Californian disappear yet? And no, there she is right now. You can
There she is. Mm-hmm.
You can still see it.
Is that Lifeboat 8 right there?
Why are you asking me?
No, that little dot right there. I think that little dot on the horizon is Lifeboat 8.
There's a little dot on the horizon between California and the Titanic, and that's Lifeboat 8 all the way out there.
I told you, the Countess of Roth was an extreme woman.
She was one determined lady.
Yeah.
The power is decreasing. You can see the fluctuation in the brightness on the decks right now. Titanic's telegraph has just become weaker. Cape Race, Canada, is now out of range. But interestingly enough, even on the ship, it still feels stable. Obviously, there's a serious list noticed, but it still feels strong. It still feels like you're standing on a rock.
Mm-hmm.
There's an interesting thing, like right before the final plunge, when water's on the boat deck. I believe it was even after the first funnel fell. I'm telling you this now because I can guarantee you I'll forget when the time comes. But two sailors leaned up against the railing and were talking with each other, thinking, well, do you think the ship's going to stop sinking at some point? You know, some people still felt like there was a chance the ship would stop sinking, even in the final plunge, just before the final plunge. I love
Well,
these.
11 launched on the other side, so
Time in the video is 1 hour, 59 minutes, 45 seconds, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50.
I love these wide shots. You really get to see the scale of the ship, and you really get to see the angle she's down. You also get to see the port list coming at you, where the decks are a little bit more exposed to the camera on this side than on the opposite side. Matt, do you have a timeline or the notes that we use to program this?
yes.
Okay. We didn't make a text file on the screen for when the last rocket fires because it's a
I
controversial.
was just thinking that too.
Yeah, it's a controversial point because no one knows for sure when the last rocket went off. But can you?
We're not exactly sure like how many rockets either. Like we know that the Californians said they saw 8 rockets. However, Boxall said that he fired more than a dozen, around a dozen. People said they saw more than a dozen, around a dozen. I think we estimated if he started at 12:47, I think the first rocket was, and he said he fired it every 5 minutes. By the time he had to have left in boat number 2, I think, he would have fired along with Rowe and the other quartermaster, I forget his name, sorry, I think it starts with C.
Right.
Together, if they alternated every 5 minutes, that would have been 14 rockets fired from the Titanic, I think.
Which fits well with about a dozen.
Mm-hmm. But he's a little bit more than a dozen, yes, exactly.
Yeah, it fits well with the statement of estimating about a dozen.
Right.
But when we get to what we counted as the last rocket, could you just tell me?
Yeah, I think so. Unless it already passed, I'm
no,
sorry.
No, it didn't, because I know coming around this front shot,
I
we see
think it already passed because I think Lifeboat 2 is going to launch in 5 minutes.
I think we have one more here. This might be our last one.
13.
I think this is our last rocket because I'm pretty sure we see one fire off here.
Okay, this is the last.
Yeah, there's one more that goes off. 13 just launched, and you might remember the scene from Cameron's movie when this happened, this bow railing.
Yeah.
They're all brass ones. Okay.
Seeing the forecastle go underwater, it's very interesting, especially with this port list going, because you don't really consider it. In a sense, if the ship were going down level, one thing I always found fascinating was at one point the forecastle would be an island. But with this port list, that just never happens.
Yeah, it's not isolated that way because the well deck also gets, because it just all floods together now. Even part of B deck is flooded.
So that condenser, that bilge pump going on the starboard side, which I mentioned about 5 minutes ago, maybe a little bit more, Lifeboat 11 just came down right next to it. And they had a huge problem because that condenser was pumping seawater literally into the lifeboat, and they nearly sank because of this. They had to get away just in time, and then they were bailing for a while. It's fascinating to watch this because the ship is going down so slow.
There was the rocket, yeah.
Yeah, the ship is going down so slow, but the drama is happening so fast. There's so much going on. When you watch this video, without the accompaniment of this podcast, a lot of people are going to find it a little boring. Just to be honest, it's 2 hours and 40 minutes of watching something very gradually go underwater. But if you were on that ship, like if we did a movie featuring everyone, or if we really documented it, there's no dull moments, none whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, you wouldn't be able to fit everything in and tell the story thoroughly. It's incredible. Because what I have to remind everyone is, as it seems slow, this is fast.
You'd have one of those little info buttons popping up every second.
Yeah, exactly. We had to be very selective about
Yes.
which text boxes we include. Now here we see Lifeboat 13 coming down. Pay very close attention here. And there is sound, by the way, as we get a little closer. So just keep that in mind. It's nothing startling, nothing loud. The orchestra, which was playing on the grand staircase boat deck, disbands at this point to go back to their cabins and get life belts. They will reassemble in a little bit, so this is not the end of their segment.
And 13 is being lowered by stewards and not seamen, as it was put, because Murdoch and the crew moved aft to boat 15, so it's being launched kind of haphazardly down quickly.
And you can see it's coming right down next to that condenser. So they're going to have a little bit of that problem that 11 just experienced, where that condenser is pumping water into it, at least in the front. But they experience an even bigger problem right afterwards. It's still hanging on the falls. And everyone is freaking out. On board this boat is Frederick Fleet, who was really
Not Fleet.
I'm sorry, I was Frederick Barrett, the other Fred.
Yeah, that's okay.
Who was one of the stokers in the engine room, and he was really doing a lot to oversee the boiler room stuff. He saw a collision from the boiler rooms, he saw the ship break open, and he's in charge of this boat. So this lifeboat is still hanging from the ropes, and they can't free it, because the condenser, the force of the condenser, is pushing water aft along the side of the ship, and it's stretching the falls, so it can't get the slack they need to unhook everything. So 11 is being stressed back. On a side note, at the same time, we have "Come as quickly as possible, old man. Engine room flooded up to the boilers." That message is sent from the telegraph office. This is the last.
Yeah.
This is the last message that goes out that people are able to understand. Everything after this is too weak. Everything after this is too weak for them to understand. 11 is still jammed on the falls as 13, fully loaded, is coming down
13,
on
15.
top of it.
15.
Sorry, yeah, 13 is under it. 15
And
is
15
coming
is
down.
the most crowded boat, too, with 68 people on it. So that's one heavy boat coming down.
So they're screaming, they're panicking in Lifeboat 13. 15 knows it's there, and they're shouting, they're screaming, they're trying to do what they can. They're shouting up to the boat deck, "Stop lowering," but they can't hear it. Just at the last second, Frederick Barrett cuts the ropes, and they use their oars and they shove off the hull of the ship and get out just as Lifeboat 15 comes down into the water. So that's... Matt, any closing words on that?
They're all, and that's luckiest break of the night right there, actually, I guess.
I guess so, yeah.
When you look at it in hindsight, yeah.
Lifeboat 2 just went.
So Boxall has now gotten off the ship, or he's about to get off. So the rockets are ceased from his side of the ship. I don't think Roe is going to launch anymore from his side.
I may be wrong, but I don't think Boxall continued to fire rockets. I think he just...
They did. They said they did it simultaneously. Him and Roe and Boxall did.
Well, then
Boxall was not seen at all lowering lifeboats.
Well, then Bright must have been on the Morse lamp, because I always thought it was Roe and
Yes, he
Bright.
did.
All right. Well, we just had Guggenheim come out of his cabin. This is the approximate time it is estimated that Guggenheim would come out and he would say his famous last words. Not the last words, but the words that are known to be his last words. He and his manservant come out and say, "We've dressed in our best and are prepared to go down as gentlemen. If anything should happen to me, I would like my wife to know that we behaved decently." The Frankfurt, the German ship, has just sent another message to the wireless room and said more questions of like, what is your situation? Are there other ships there? Do you need us? So it's basically expressing extreme confusion. Earlier they said they were on their way. And now it's starting to sound like they're not coming after all. So Phillips disregards them. And it turns out they're not coming. They weren't on their way. Here we see Lifeboat 4 still hanging off of A deck.
At least they're filling it now, finally.
Yes. Madeline Astor, the young wife of John Jacob Astor, the richest man on the ship, he puts her into the lifeboat. She gets in. She's 9 months pregnant. And he helps her in. He turns to Officer Lightoller and says, "May I accompany my wife? She's in a delicate condition." And he says no. So he says goodbye to her. "I'll see you in New York." Hands her his gloves. And she asks, "Can you please go find our dog?" Because the Titanic has, I think, 12 or 13 dogs on board. And it's, according to legend, Astor then went off and freed the dogs from the kennels. There were actually 3 dogs that survived the sinking of the Titanic. 1 from the water, and 2 were snuck in by passengers. Little dogs snuck in under their coats.
I think they were Pekingese or something, lap dogs, yeah.
Yeah. The Olympic, Titanic's near-identical sister ship, responds to the distress calls and finally says, "We are on our way."
Well, it's about time.
Yes, I know, really. But they're 500 miles away. They're not going anywhere.
No, they couldn't do anything. They wanted Titanic to sail towards them at the same time.
Olympic just did not
make it
get,
easier.
Olympic did not get what was going on.
A lot of the ships did not understand the situation.
Yeah, and they didn't take it seriously either. I mean,
No.
like, it's not like they were joking or not taking it seriously. They just didn't understand the gravity of it.
Right.
So Olympic's asking about the weather. It's saying
Mhm.
what is going on. And Phillips says, "We're evacuating. We're putting women and children off into the lifeboats."
Yeah, our engine room's flooding. We can't move.
Yeah. And then the Olympic's like, "Well, are you steaming southerly to meet us?" And Phillips was going nuts as the ship was sinking. He had all of the weight on him. He knew, as soon as the ship was confirmed sinking, he knew that survival was on him. And all these ships just could not get it. And now you just saw right there, the lights have flickered, the power is decreased, Olympic is out of range. As soon as they confirmed they were coming, just moments later, power just plummets. And now Titanic's telegraph can't reach them. Because the range is 100% based off of the amount of power coming through. Maybe not 100%, but you get it. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, 4 is finally being launched after its entire, hour-long ordeal of just hanging there empty. And it doesn't have very far to go. And passengers on the way down, I think it was Emily Ryerson, she said she looked in and she saw the square portholes on this. She called it D deck, even though it was B deck. She looked in at the square portholes. They can see the water filling up one open one, and a cabin swirling with water. And that's how low in the water the ship was. That these suites on B deck were flooding finally, and that boat's going to be stuck there for 5 minutes or so while it's stuck at the falls. So, Lifeboat 4 still can't get away from Titanic after all this time. And I think it also said Lifeboat 10 is being launched. Yes, there it goes at the end. That's the last boat on the aft side, or the aft section of the ship to be launched. And they waited long to launch that lifeboat. They launched the other 3 aft boats first because they never uncovered that boat. They left it pretty much in the swing-in position for the longest time. And it's finally being lowered.
Is there a reason for that?
I don't know if there was any specific reason. I think just to make it easier so they didn't have people trying to swarm that boat. They didn't want the stowaways to get in, because at the end they had to create human chains to prevent passengers and the men, or as in 1912, in the rampant racist terms, they would use the Italians or the foreigners to get into the lifeboats, as they said. They had to prevent all those types of individuals to get into boats, so they just didn't open that one up until the other 3 were gone, so they could have more control over it. Because that's how they would describe anybody in the boats who were not of their standards, who they seemed to deem to be stowaways. Oh, now we're crazily in the grand staircase.
These shots are based off Lightoller's testimony. One thing that he would talk about, which I found fascinating, just in terms of imagining it, As he was launching the lifeboats, periodically he would go rushing into the grand staircase and look down that well. And he would see various levels of the sinking. He could watch the ship sink from the inside by looking down that well. He would see water on E deck. Then he would come back a few minutes later. Now it's on C deck. What you just saw there, water is on C deck.
2:14, 31 seconds.
That's the time in the video. What's the Titanic time?
It's 1:53 a.m. and that looks like a famous painting almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's now it's 2:14, 45, 46, 47, 48.
I think the only boats left on Titanic are the collapsible lifeboats.
I think you might be right. Did 2 leave already?
2 left, yes.
I'm not
2 is
keeping-
making its journey around the ship.
It goes on a little grand tour.
Oh, is that 1? No, 2. Yes, 2 starts in the forward section of the ship, and then goes all the way around the stern.
Oh, pleasure cruise right there. Sightseeing.
Yeah.
They wanted to check out the propellers. The condenser, as you see on the starboard side, is still going, and it's very likely that just kept going until it died on its own. Which probably would have been, I guess, when the power went out. I honestly wouldn't know. Probably going to get a text saying it.
Let us know what happens.
So now,
You can see that the deck is completely empty of lifeboats. I wonder what it would, people would say from the lifeboats that the decks were empty of lifeboats, but they were swarming with passengers.
yes.
So while we see here, we don't see anything up there. We have to imagine it full of people looking over the sides, wondering what are they going to do when they see these boats in the water and they don't see any boats on the deck.
Absolutely, yeah. It must have been so chilling. Because someone had said that despite the evacuation, despite getting people away in the boats, it looked like the deck was becoming more and more populated. And that was because more passengers were coming out on the deck. So there's a lot of people still on board. Right now, there's probably 1,700, or maybe 1,650 still on board.
They're the first boats that were launched, boats 7 and 5. They were together and just laid on their oars during the night and watched and waited.
Yes. Someone is asking, will the game have people walking around? We don't address specific questions about the game as a general policy, because so much is up in the air, and we're in the investor period. This is where we gotta kind of keep our mouth shut publicly. But we can say that, definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's characters in the game. You play as a passenger, and you meet people, you meet passengers, you meet crew, and it's going to be crowded. Now, obviously, it's still a game. No matter how good graphics are now, we still have limitations. We can't have all 2,200 people on board be real people. So what we've done is we've picked out 2 people. We've picked out approximately 200, 220, 190. The number keeps fluctuating. Who we have made 100% real, meaning they're real people. We researched them. You can see their stories, and the rest are generic. We just have to do that because we're limited.
One thing I wanted to add. Somebody asked, is the game going to be out in 2016? No.
Yeah, we're in investor stage.
And as an aside, apparently our Wikipedia page says 2017, and that's not true either.
Oh, YouTube says that now, too. We can't confirm any of this stuff. We would love to confirm this stuff. But until we secure funding, we don't know. So anyway, Captain Smith's just gone into the wireless room and said, where our engine rooms are flooded. No, that came earlier. But he went in and said, abandon your cabin. It's every man for himself. And you can leave. That's the way of it at this kind of time. And he walks out of the cabin. What?
That looks like the photograph, a famous Titanic photograph taken at Queenstown.
Oh yeah, it kind
That
of
angle
does.
right
Just
there. Yeah.
almost looks like someone photoshopped it into water.
It's kind of sad now, yeah.
So So Bride and Phillips in the telegraph room have just been allowed to leave, but they don't. They stay in there and they continue transmitting. It's not even sending, but they stay at their post, desperately trying to get it. In Phillips's mind, he has not achieved what they need, and what they need is rescue. So he is going to stay at his post if he goes down with the ship. He is that committed to getting rescued. Bride, on the other hand, who is younger, who is less stressed, and he's not at the telegraph personally, he is encouraging Phillips, come on, we have to get out of here. So he is going back and forth, and he is trying really hard to get Phillips to just leave. I'm not saying Bride is a coward. This is definitely time to go, but Bride realizes our messages are not going. We have to get out of here.
It's futile.
Exactly.
You're just going to add your names to a list of, if you're not going to be able to help anything.
Exactly. I'll be right back. I need more water. Oh, wait, no, I got to address this.
All right.
Bride is hardcore. No, Phillips is hardcore. All right, anyway. The lifeboats are gone, except for the collapsibles. Andrews and Smith and Wilde are just awestruck by how many people are still on the ship. And they know the lifeboats were leaving half full, so they get Captain Smith's megaphone and they start walking the deck, calling the lifeboats back to the sinking Titanic. There's a deleted scene in James Cameron's movie where they call Boat 6 with Margaret Brown. Check that out. But they call these lifeboats back, and none reply. Bruce Ismay, the owner of the Titanic, more or less, has been pushing people into lifeboats and trying to get them launched. He's really been encouraging the evacuation.
He's helped lower a couple of them, too.
He helps lower a couple. And so,
personally,
at this point now, the last lifeboat on the side he's working on, Lifeboat 6, Collapsible C, is the last lifeboat on the starboard side, with the exception of the one on the roof. This is the last lifeboat to leave, and Murdoch says to him, get in that boat. Practically ordering him to get into that boat. And the people in the lifeboat there who saw it happen say it happened. So, say what you want about Ismay, but he did not jump into a boat out of cowardice. We strongly believe that he was fully aware of the fact that he was going to be needed in the testimony. He was going to be needed to be the voice of the company, to be the voice of the ship, because if he didn't survive, there would be so many stories out there in the media saying all these mistakes were made. He needed to be the defendant of the company. Not to say that the company is more important than lives, I'm not saying this, but it is important to have two sides of the story to make sure it is balanced. And if he had not survived every conversation that we know about between Smith and Murdoch and Andrews, all came from him. And they would not have been saved. We wouldn't know them. So we wouldn't have known when Andrews declared the ship was sinking. We wouldn't have known that he said an hour or two. We wouldn't have known any of that stuff. We wouldn't have known half of Murdoch's actions.
Yeah.
So he really knew that this was a duty to get off of that ship. And one last quick note to defend Ismay. He didn't steal a seat from anyone either. That lifeboat had vacancies, and there was no one else around. He was told to get in.
Right. Again, he would have been one other life with a 1497th life that died that night if he didn't get into that boat.
Exactly. And that's considering also the fact that the lack of lifeboats was not to save money. It was not to be more impressive. It was because they were not necessary. It was because they were not practical. We could go into a lot more detail on that, and I can guarantee you would convince all of you. But in my mind, that vindicates Ismay of a lot of guilt that has been placed on him. So, anyway, we've now swung around to the port side.
Lifeboat D.
Yeah, now we're looking at Lifeboat D. Matt, why don't you take it for a moment?
Okay, Lifeboat D is pretty much it's the last lifeboat to get launched from the davits. And as you can see, the water is right up to the promenade deck. Water is about to go over the railing. For the sake of our model, it's already over the railing, but that's okay. Even though
Lights are glowing.
Lights are glowing, yeah. Some of the passengers who jumped into this lifeboat at the very end from the promenade deck said he looked down the empty promenade deck and looked at the electric ceiling lights and saw that they were glowing an ominous red. So that's what the power was doing at this point. And even though there's still 1,500 plus people on board the ship at this point, this boat still only leaves with 20 seats filled.
Out of, like, what, 45?
I think, is it 40 in a collapsible? I'm not even sure. It does pick up 3 extra people who jump into the sea later on that night. So it at least gets 3 other extra survivors. However, still, this last lifeboat leaves from the Titanic technically half filled.
Let me jump back to Ismay real quick.
Mm-hmm.
One of our people in the comments here, someone named Parks, is saying it's a good thing that they kept the lifeboat number to 20. And this is a very good point, because if they were to put more lifeboats on the ship, they would have had 2 rows next to each other the whole length of the ship, or they would have had them inside of each other. So the problem...
Wouldn't it be inside of each other like Olympic later had, probably?
Yeah, that's what I just said. Either next to each other or inside of each other. And that means there would have been an extra step of getting the boats out of the way, swinging the first row in, and it would have complicated things. And come on, guys, we've been watching this in real time. You've seen just how many times they've screwed up with the lifeboats that they had. They were dropping them.
That's true.
They were messing them up. They were launching them with holes in them. If you had extra lifeboats in the way, you're going to get like 3 from the ship. And there are videos on YouTube where they sink ships for like artificial reefs. And there's one that I saw where they left a rowboat about the size of Titanic's lifeboats sitting in the middle of the deck. And when that ship was sunk, the waves crashed over and just smashed the boat. So one might argue that even if they couldn't launch the boats, they could float them off. They would be ripped to shreds by the plunge. Of course, the final 2 collapsibles at the front were able to float off, but this is because the plunge was only beginning. If you tried floating a boat off around the back 2 funnels, they would have broken up. They would have been ripped to shreds, even if the ship didn't break in half. All right, excuse me, I gotta go get that water and an aspirin.
All right. This is the point where 2 first-class passengers, Hugh Woolner and the one I can never pronounce.
Maurice Stephenson.
Thank you for pronouncing his name. As I was stating, they saw an open space, obviously, in this half-filled lifeboat in the bow, and they jump in from the fashion plate right there, the curved part of the A deck bulkhead. They jump into the bow. I think Stephenson makes it into the boat, and Woolner gets half in, and I think his legs zip in the water. But they jump into the boat, and I think then one other first-class passenger, he makes a jump into the water and gets pulled into the boat. But they get away as fast as they can because this is it. It's now 2:07 a.m. Titanic time. The time in our video is 2:27:55. There's no time left. The crew are now going to work as hard as they can to get the 2 collapsibles down from the top of the officers' quarters. They're not going to use the block and tackle and connect it to the guy wires that are attached to the number 1 funnel. There's actually 2 hooks coming down the wires from the funnels, which are used technically, where it's designed to attach a block and tackle to swing the boats off from the officer's quarter onto the boat deck below. Instead, I think on the starboard side, Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, they cut the wires, actually, on the starboard side.
I think that was the port side.
Is it port side? On one side of the funnels, they cut the wires, thinking that they're going to be in the way of the boat. So these boats are in an illogical place, technically. They're not in a good spot to get them launched efficiently, and that's going to pay a price soon when the ship starts plunging down. which kind of goes into the argument we were making earlier about more lifeboats would just become a hindrance. Yes, you have a raft for people to float on, but you might be able to save an additional dozen. Granted, a dozen is better than nothing, but the more numbers you add, the less that number, the less the odds increase.
Also, there was no disaster like the Titanic prior. You just don't think that a ship is going to go down. You don't expect an airline to go down. Obviously now we have a history. We have technology, and that this technology has been around for over a century. We've had airplanes since 1906. We've had transatlantic for 2 centuries on a regular basis. So we have a long history now where we know things go wrong. We know how to analyze them. We know how to recover the wrecks. We know how to use computers to figure this stuff out more. Back then, they didn't have any of that stuff. And they didn't have the prior experience of a huge transatlantic ship like the Titanic, like the Olympic, like the Lusitania going down. So you don't think of this stuff. You don't think we're going to need lifeboats for everyone because this ship's going to sink. So that's just another thing about why they didn't have enough lifeboats.
Mm-hmm.
We're wrapping around. You're about to see Collapsible A, which is this boat right here on top of the officer's quarters. You're going to see it go down. The animation is a little odd. We did it deliberately. There were oars propped up against that wall right there, and it slides down. So we kind of have the boat react as if there are oars there, so it slides. That's why it doesn't just plummet. And it lands right there. At about 2:09, the wireless room is abandoned. I'm very questioning about that time right there. I can't confirm that. Now we see the water starting to come up onto the boat deck. The Officer Lightaller is up on the roof. He's got a whole bunch of men with him. He's trying to prepare Collapsible B, which is that collapsible right there on the roof. Collapsible A on the other side is with Murdoch and Wild and Moody, and they are all trying everything they can to get that boat away, because this plunge is about to begin. Gunshots are going off from Murdoch's side. Not going to go any further on that one. They're cranking in those lifeboat davits. You can actually see them when the camera starts to come back around, I believe. Oh, now we're looking down. The water is on B deck. So, anyway, we're going to start swinging around to the other side as soon as we leave this shot, and you're going to see the cranes from the lifeboat 1 position being cranked in. You see them cranking back because they were designed that way to pick up more lifeboats. So they're cranking in to pick up Collapsible A, which is right there. They attach the falls, but they're also loading it with people at the same time because the crew is getting so hectic. Some people are following some orders, some are following the others. Watch Collapsible B fall right here. It gained extra momentum from the tilt, and it flipped upside down. On top of Harold Bride, by the way. So now, you really see the ship is picking up speed. It is starting to go down. It looks like it's slow because we don't have water turbulence or anything like that, but if you were standing on that deck and you were watching that railing go down, this is fast. This would be very fast for you.
People said they were washed away.
Yeah.
The decks were full of passengers one moment, and then this wave came and washed the decks clear.
Couldn't do the wave, but...
You know.
But the plunge is still building up. We haven't yet reached that moment of just dropping away. It's increasing, as you see as we're going through the navigational bridge. Watch the life ring there. That just drops under really quickly. Now we're coming around. A is on the falls. The cranes would have come in, they would have picked up the boat, and they would have started cranking it out. But they would have remained in that vertical position as they submerge, and they are still standing like that on the wreck, which really goes to show, it proves, it's a monument to the fact that these crewmen were working until the ship slipped out from under them. Ship A lifting up. One thing we didn't incorporate in this animation is when they freed it from the falls, it basically slingshotted up because it was starting to sink. It slingshots up with a full load of people on board, mostly passengers, women and children. This is the last lifeboat with women and children in it. And when it slingshots up, it actually flips over and faces the officers' quarters, which is that wall next to it. And all of the people, including Lorraine Allison, the only first-class child to be lost in the sinking, and they get dumped out, and they start getting sucked in. The lifeboat rights itself again, half swamped, and other people manage to climb aboard. So that's what we get to see going on right now. We're swinging around, and there goes the first funnel. She splashes down in the water. She crushes a few people. According to legend, she crushed John Jacob Astor and his dog. But that's not confirmed. It also picked up Harold Bride, whose ankle is screwed up from the lifeboat, and it picks him up and it throws him out there. Officer Lightaller ditches off of the officer's quarters. He did that already, actually, but you see the crow's nest is now submerged. When he jumped off, he swam out to it, not really thinking. He saw it, he thought, okay, I can find refuge on the crow's nest, and then as soon as he started swimming to it, he realized how ridiculous that was. It's part of the ship. And then vents started sucking him back. Now we see the plunge really going forward. Water is through the grand staircase. The grand staircase is submerging rapidly. The orchestra would have dispersed long ago, probably a good 2-3 minutes ago at the latest, as where they were playing is now underwater. They would have been right to, next to that second funnel. Water is inching up the deck. We still don't have a rapid plummet. This is really rapid, but it's not just dropping like 5 feet a second. The grand staircase is gone. The dome would have already collapsed. The stairs themselves would have ripped out and been floating out by now. It would have been a whirlpool over the dome as it floods into it. Water at the base of the second funnel, and then ignite it.
You want to explain what happened there, why it exploded?
I don't think we have time right now because things are about to really pick up. Let's revisit that after the video. The ship is going down. The stern is rising out of the water. The people in the lifeboats are speechless.
And soon there'll be a Ken painting angle coming up.
We are at 2 hours, 38 minutes, and 19, 20 seconds. We really encourage everyone to make sure they're synced up. 25, 26, 27 seconds. The lounge is half flooded. We were in the lounge of the sister ship just a couple months ago in Alnwick, England. Everything is falling forward. Furniture, everything loose inside the ship. Deck chairs, people, loaves of bread, all the cargo. And there are 1,500 people still on board the Titanic. I'll let it play through the end before I say anything else. All right, so Officer Lightaller was on the overturned lifeboat, Collapsible B, which we saw flip over. And he and 27 other men watched the ship go down. And he said as soon as the ship disappeared, everyone, almost in unison on the boat, said, "She's gone." Hate to break the mood, but are you guys hearing me? I don't know if my microphone's off.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, she sank right there, and it is accurate the way we showed it. We have a few adjustments that we're already aware of that we're going to take into account, but for the most part, that is very accurate. It did go down that fast after it broke apart. So, and yes, they did hear it breaking apart as it went down, because the whole stern section was, not the whole one, but that's where a lot of the refrigeration compartments were, the freezers. So basically these airtight or semi-airtight sections of the ship. So as they were going down, they were air pockets. And 300, 400, 500 feet underwater, they start imploding. So, guys, I just want to let you all know, for those of you who have been with us since the beginning of this podcast, as far as I'm aware, we are the first people to watch a depiction of the Titanic in real time, in authentic recreation, since the actual sinking. Right, Matt, Kyle?
Aside from the people who watched it before the podcast, and quite a few did.
Yeah, but I mean, still.
Well, it happened, yeah.
Yeah. And we watched it exactly synced up with the anniversary to the minute. So right now.
A close one, yeah.
Anyway.
So it's pretty cool, I guess, yeah.
A quick note on the video views. When I started this podcast, I had it loaded. It was about 4,100 views. And now it is up to 10,800.
What, did you guys just sit there refreshing it the whole time?
Mm-hmm.
No, I just refreshed it.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, this was the first time in 104 years that people have seen that ship go down in real time. There are a couple of real-time videos out there on YouTube, so it's not a new concept, but not to knock them, but I think we were the first to take it that extra mile and really put the detail of lifeboats going in, do a full animation, not slowed down footage or anything like that. So this was really the first time that this was depicted. And especially the first time that there was some sort of communal group. We had a solid 400 plus the whole podcast. This was the first time we had a communal effort, a communal thing in real time on the anniversary. So that was fantastic. Thank you all for joining us. We're going to stick around and talk for a little bit more. We've got things to talk about. I promised the second funnel would be discussed. We've got other things to discuss, so stick around as long as you want. But this concludes the real time. We're still going to touch on a couple actions in the lifeboats as it progresses. But anyway. Yes, people are saying... Matt, are you shuffling around? People are asking, do we do this every year? And yes, we do, actually.
I was getting my book, sorry.
Although this was the first time we did it with a video.
And the video is free to watch anytime. So if you missed it, you can watch it again. And we will be publishing this podcast when it's done, so you'll be able to play this podcast along with the video later on.
Oh boy.
So if you missed it, or if you missed parts, or if you want to recommend it to people, they can still join in. So yeah. Anyway, okay, Matt. Second funnel. It's all you, Chiefy.
Oh, thanks. Well, anyway, when we make let's where do we start with that? We know when the second funnel fell, there were people who said that it was still belching smoke and emitting a cloud of sparks on top of it. There's several accounts of that. There's also accounts of people who were in the water who said it looked like one of the funnels crashed and lifted up like towards him. I think that was there, actually. I think that was there. I believe that the gymnasium roof is crushed inboard on the wreck. So we tried to make it look as if the second funnel... How do we have it? I don't remember now. We went over this a lot. Kind of tilted, and I don't know why there's an explosion, Tom. I don't know why there's an explosion at the base. That was kind of a lost in translation thing when I told you to add sparks coming out of the top of it. I'm sorry. It was like 4 a.m, and I said, add sparks to the second funnel collapse, and I think you all took it as explosion.
No, we knew.
But it's supposed to just collapse when the water hits it, and kind of a rush of air. Like imagine if you're pressing in a tube. That's the water. Like the funnels are just these light constructed tubes. They're not designed to take any type of water pressure from outside of them. They're just supposed to be held in by gravity and held in place where they're supposed to stand by the stays. And it basically fell, the forward one anyway, when water hit it. Water pressed along the port side of it, and it crushed the base, and it fell. The second one, probably the same thing, but the guy wires had it fall down, and one side of it crushed the gymnasium. And at the same time, the second funnel was probably a little bit hotter than the first one, so it emitted a bunch of sparks. And Tom and Kyle added an explosion.
Well,
Sorry.
We found the explosion feature on Unreal, and it would have been a waste not to put it in.
No.
That is true. There's a shock wave, which is weird, but I could.
No, but seriously, there's also testimony from I forget his first name. His last name was Williams. He was an Olympic tennis player, and he was traveling on the Titanic.
It was Dick Williams, yeah.
Okay.
He watched the funnel. He watched that funnel, kill his father.
Yeah. It just fell and rolled around on the deck for a moment.
And he said it was belching smoke. That was his quote. So that something was coming out of it. And since that funnel was probably, there's no boilers on underneath. There's no boilers 3 and 4, I believe, were not on at the time. there'd be no reason for it to be belching smoke at that point in the sinking. So something caused all the soot, caused lumps of coal from the intakes to be ejected from the funnel as it was collapsing. I think the Lusitania had a similar depiction as it was sinking too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, that was all. You're referring to that drawing, which was used as a recruitment poster.
I think it was several. I'm not sure. I'm not in nowhere a Lusitania expert.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway,
let's keep talking about explosions. There were definitely several accounts of explosions right as the ship bridge plunged under the water, and it seems that there were stated as several or 4 explosions, like a rumble of thunder, or someone said it sounded like anchor chains being dragged across the deck, and that was right as the ship was making its plunge. So does that coordinate to our exploding funnel? Maybe.
Yes. A lot of the sound effects which we incorporated, particularly during the breakup, are heavily based off of descriptions of what it sounded like. Even with the sound effects, not just the visuals, but the sound effects as well during that animation, we really tried hard to recreate what people said they heard. So we hear underwater explosions go off. We hear all sorts of things going on. Someone asks what the explosions were right before the break. I used a sound effect there, which I originally created for a movie about 4 years ago about the Titanic, about the wireless operators. Got to plug it real quick. Last Signals. It's on YouTube. It's really cool. Go check it out. But the 2 explosions were supposed to be hull plates giving way.
Well, a lot of people say explosions, but we think like bursting out, but it may not have been explosions. It may have just been the hull like making loud noises.
Yeah, I mean, just because it sounds, it's just they just say explosion because it sounds loud. Like certain other historical events where people say there were explosions, and
they might have been told like, oh, the boiler. They might have heard on the Carpathia the boilers exploded or something. Oh, that's what that noise was. It was an explosion, and they would have thus in the report said, I heard a loud explosion. That's what that noise was, an explosion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So explosion's a very vague term when you think about it. So that. Anything else you guys want to tackle? Right. What time is it now in Titanic World, or did you stop checking?
It's 2:31.
2:31. The ship sank 11 minutes ago. One of the let's touch on Officer Lowe real quick again. I was joking around about how grumpy he was throughout the whole night, and how separate he was from the rest of the crew. But he went above and beyond, especially at this point. He rounded up a couple of the lifeboats. He was in charge of Lifeboat 14. He pulled up Lifeboat 4 alongside with him and one other lifeboat. And he spent that time emptying Lifeboat 14 into the empty seats of the other 2 lifeboats so that he had a completely empty lifeboat except for himself and a couple men to work the oars.
Mm-hmm.
And their idea was they were going to row back and pick people up out of the water. But the problem was it took so long to coordinate emptying the boats and getting everyone shuffled around and then finally to row back that everyone in the water was dead. They pulled 4 or 5 people up into the boat, but as far as I'm aware, every single one of those people were on something. There was a Chinese passenger from 3rd class. He was on a deck chair or a couple of deck chairs. There was someone.
I think it was a door. A door?
I don't know.
I think he lashed himself to a door.
And then don't start talking about doors, no.
And then there was someone on the grand staircase which broke out.
Supposedly.
So they were, and then of course Rose.
Yeah, yes.
I guess I should probably clarify that was a joke.
Mm-hmm.
So they picked up 4 or 5 people out of the water, which is far fewer than he had really wanted. And
yeah, it was a door. It was Fang Lang. Sorry.
Yes. But they then later pulled up alongside Collapsible B, which was sinking. That was the overturned boat. and they got those people off of there and put them into boat 14 and boat 4.
Yeah, boat 4 ended. Boat 4 left the Titanic the last minutes with 30 people. It eventually was filled up with like people from boat 14, people from boat Collapsible B at the end of the night, and had like 60 people on board when it reached the Carpathia.
Exactly.
There's a lot of reshuffling going on in those lifeboats, which kind of confuses the whole estimates of how many people were saved from the Titanic. How many people were in this lifeboat.
Yeah, it really, really added to the confusion. So here's something let's touch on real quick. We've mentioned a lot of names throughout the night. Let's mention who made it and who didn't. Thomas Andrews, Captain Smith, Officer Murdoch, they were all lost. Chief Officer Wilde, he was lost as well. Second Officer Lightoller managed to make it to the overturned lifeboat, and he took command of it while it was sinking. And it was slowly sinking, like over the course of an hour or two. And they got picked up by another lifeboat, which he then took command of as well. And Second Officer Lightoller survived. He was the 4th highest ranked on the ship, but the highest ranked to survive. Bruce Ismay made it into Collapsible C and survived, and he lived the rest of his life in shame. He got onto the Carpathia, the rescue ship, and he locked himself in a cabin. And a lot of people, like to ridicule him and say, oh, he just wanted to be elite and separate himself. No, he went in, and he did not want to talk to anyone. The doctor of the Carpathia visited him a number of times and said, this is a man who died on the Titanic. He might have survived the sinking, but in a very real sense, he did not. He was shaking the whole time on the Carpathia. He was pale. He was sick. He barely ate, and he just stayed in a cabin and would not come out. So yeah. Then Harold Bride got out of the wireless room. So did Phillips. Phillips ran aft, and Harold Bride helped with Collapsible B and ended up getting himself stuck under it. Way to go. But he managed to pull himself out after really damaging his foot. And he climbed up onto it and stayed on it with Lightoller and a number of others until rescue came. He survived. Now, there is a very strong rumor, which I do believe, that Phillips made it to a lifeboat as well. And he basically was alive until the Carpathia came. In my eyes, he basically wanted to confirm that he did his duty. That even if the ship sank before rescue arrived, he wanted to make sure that one of the ships he was talking to made it, at least for those in the lifeboats. So he stayed there. He was apparently talking to Lightoller for a while. And finally the Carpathia came on the horizon. He supposedly turned to Lightoller and said, that'll be the Carpathia now. And then he died. Officer Lowe survived. Pittman survived. Boxall survived. But Sixth Officer Moody, who said he would get a lifeboat later, and who was helping with Collapsible A, he also died. Matt, Kyle.
Yes. Those are all the famous people who we know about. So there's countless others who are relatively unknown, who we are, I don't mean to make this like a plug, but who we're trying to incorporate in our game.
You can plug
that
our
you
game.
could. Yeah, well,
Go right ahead and plug our game.
Everyone's story,
Everyone's here for the game.
I end up reading some random. There's always someone to discover in Titanic whose story you never know about until you're like, oh wow, this person's story is so fascinating, and there's hundreds like that, and hopefully we include them, at least a couple of them in the game.
Yeah.
So
And we will. We have plans to include, obviously, the ones that
third
everyone-
and second class, yeah, especially third and second class.
Yeah.
But even lesser known first class passengers.
Yeah, well, we obviously want to include the ones that everyone expects. You're going to see Margaret Brown, you're going to see Astor, you're going to see the officers. So we got to give people what they expect, but at the same time, we got to shine some light on some new people, which is really cool. Well, I guess we're winding it down. I guess we're running out of things to say without being too excessive, and we certainly don't want to let this drag on for too long. Someone says, please, the 3 dogs. What do you mean? Yeah, 3 dogs survived.
I think we missed it. What is?
2 dogs were brought into a lifeboat by their owners. And another rumor, which can't be confirmed, but I also believe it, that there was a dog in the water, a black lab, I believe. And
It was one dog was named Satyun Sen or something, I believe.
That was
He was a
Astor's.
Pekingese,
That was
wasn't he?
Astor's dog. No, the Astor's
No.
dog was Kitty.
Kitty was Astor's dog.
Why do we know all this? Okay.
Harp was, I think it was Harper's dog. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
Well, let me finish the thing about the black lab in the water. Supposedly he belonged to Officer Murdoch. I don't know if that part's true, but
I guess
he was picked up by a lifeboat. He swam out to a boat. They pitied him. They pulled him aboard, and supposedly the Carpathia, in the course of picking up the passengers, almost ran this lifeboat down. They were too distracted by finding other lifeboats that they didn't see this lifeboat under the bow, and they almost ran it down. But everyone in the boat was too weak to shout up, but the dog was barking, and the dog's barks caught the attention of the Carpathia crew, and they picked him up and they saved the lifeboat. And because the owner of the dog died in the sinking, the Carpathia's crew actually adopted the dog as the ship's dog.
that's a fun little story.
Yeah.
No, I hope you get a text about it. Anyway,
What do you mean?
I don't believe it. That's all.
Like a text coming in saying, that's not true, stop telling people lies?
Yes. Okay.
For all this disinformation.
No, he's asleep.
Oh, darn. Okay. If we update the progress plan, we'll just be showing you the whole ship at this point.
No.
Well, except for those minor, forward spaces. Things are going by fast. I'm sorry.
We never did have a guest.
Well, we had guests sitting around waiting. I think they were on the sidelines, yo, tap me in. But,
Yeah, good thing to bring that up. Okay.
what?
But never mind. I forgot about it already.
So, yeah. All right. Let's see. What else?
Was that a text? I heard a text.
Yeah, that was someone
Is there-
else.
What about a quick Q&A? We're kind of doing that right now anyway. I mean,
Fine. Can we make the...
we can't do forums for the game because that deals with investor issues. So that's why they're not up.
Yeah, we made them briefly, but legally it's just that's not something you want to tackle this early in a project. So
Not with the investor. Yeah, that's the one. That's just, we have to leave it like that.
yeah,
You can chat. It's just tough for us to manage that and have it be our personal forums.
I got a question here, which I think I want to tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's asking, in our opinions, what story is the saddest? And I think watching that animation of the ship going down really put everyone in the right mindset of how solemn the disaster was. So I think let's tackle this question now, especially since all of us here like to joke. I know we're going to joke around in answering these other questions. So let's tackle the solemn stuff first while we're all still kind of feeling the effects of watching that ship go down. So I might be able to come up with a sadder story if I recall it a little bit more. But one story that always gets me is the story of Jack Thayer. He was only 17 years old, And he was traveling on the Titanic with his father, who was the vice president of the Pennsylvania Railroad. So they're from Philadelphia, which is local for me. And when they had the collision, Jack Thayer was excited by it. He's like, "This is awesome. Let's explore. This is going to be an adventure." Obviously, not knowing the ship was going down. So his father went along with him. He's like, "All right, let's go check the ship out." And I just see this kind of as like this father-son bonding moment where they get the opportunity to just do something fun together, or what they feel is fun, obviously not knowing how it would turn out. And they explore the ship, they go down to the mailroom, they look in, they see the water coming, and it's this very father-son-esque moment. And then the ship starts to go down, and they realize this is serious. They get their wife, they get their maid, the Thayer Sr.'s wife, Jack Thayer's mother. They get her into a lifeboat, they get their maid into a lifeboat, but in the crowd, in the sinking, Jack and his father get separated. And they spend the whole next hour looking for each other. They each linked up with a friend of theirs. John Thayer linked up with George Widener, another Philadelphian. Jack Thayer, the 17-year-old, linked up with his friend Milton Long. And they were all going all over the ship looking for each other, trying to reunite them. And it's not something that's really gone public, but it's something we've discovered here in our extensive research. But they almost saw each other. If they looked in the other direction, they would have reunited in the last moments. But instead, they never see each other again. And Jack Thayer, the 17-year-old, survives. John Thayer Sr. goes down with the ship. So, I mean, it's a sad story to begin with, but it's that detail, that they were so close to being reunited. And it would have been just 5 minutes before the ship goes down anyway. It was right as the ship was starting to plunge. They were like 10 feet away from each other, and they just didn't see each other. So that's the story that gets me. Matt?
Well, I don't want to go too much into detail of my story. It's the story of John Collins. I think he was just 18 years old, and he worked in the kitchens, in the scullery, so basically he washes dishes. And he was on the boat deck, I think I'm not sure which side, but he was forward near one of the collapsibles trying to help a screaming, panicked woman with her 2 children, I believe. Either she had 2 children and a baby, or he had 2 children, but he had a mate with him, and they were trying to help her get into a lifeboat, and she was panicking, and she wasn't speaking any English. And just as they were getting to the lifeboat, finally, that's when the plunge happened and the wave hit them. And he said in his testimony at the American Inquiry how he was holding on to the child the best he could, and he was holding on, but when he got to the surface, he opened his eyes, but that child was gone that was in his arms, and he was just sad by it. And that story is one that just always got me, that he was just trying to help. And he was just he was still a young kid, 18, and he wasn't a seaman or anything. He worked in the kitchen washing dishes, and he was just trying to help somebody, and he had to have a child, a young baby, like swept out of his arms, and it's just stories like that I read that when I was probably like 9 years old, and I always remember that one. I don't know why, but I thought that was the saddest story. Yeah. I don't want to say that any one story is sadder than the other, or that there is a saddest story out there, but that's just the one that gets me always.
I think it almost I'd be willing to wager that the woman he was helping was Alma Paulson, because she was Swedish, didn't speak English.
Mm-hmm.
She had kids. She had 4 kids, which were about that age, and she ran forward to that boat. So I would say that was probably Alma Paulson. I was just about to add something. It was sad, but I forget what it was. Kyle, do you have any?
Nope. I'm not as familiar with the stories as you. The ship is my baby.
Okay. We could go on all night with sad stories. But yeah,
I thought of more, so yeah.
yeah. All right, let's do one more question. What do we got? Anyone? Throw your questions in. Can you ask a question? Yes, you can. Who was the special guest joining us? It was Parks, except he joined us via text.
Yeah.
I think he talked to someone.
He was a ghost guest.
Yeah.
There's so many questions I know. Sorry.
I can't even read this. What is this?
What?
We do a lot of research. That should answer a lot of questions.
Yeah, we have access to a lot of...
A lot of people are very generous in helping us to create this.
If you want to know a secret, we have a time machine.
No, we don't.
Don't talk about that. That stays between us.
Well, Matt said earlier that he was the time something earlier.
It's true.
Okay. All right. Well, do you see any questions?
No.
I can't see anything. It's going. Whoop. It's going really fast.
Telephones are on C deck and B deck.
Something about a Kyle conspiracy. No,
I don't think there were anything about phonographs. What was my
Kevin? What about Artemis Fox? What about Cabin 837?
I don't want to answer any questions about things that we did wrong. So if you say anything we did anything wrong, I'm not going to answer those.
For multiple reasons. You can
go through all the cabins.
Let me address inaccuracies, by the way. There are various reasons why there are inaccuracies. For one, sometimes it is just a simple mistake. Two, we sometimes find things with some of our exclusive resources which we realize is correct, and then we put out there, and then it's not expected, so a lot of people think it's wrong, especially if other people are basing theirs off of Olympic sources. So sometimes it's right but mistaken for wrong. And,
no one knows where lifeboats are.
And sometimes we put mistakes in deliberately because we have a bit of a problem with people knocking our model off. So, anyway, but they won't be like that in the final game.
Some things we can't answer. Some things we don't want to have opinions on like that.
Like what?
So, I don't want to say what it is. I'm not going to give an opinion on it. I'm sorry.
Well, type it. I'm curious now.
I'll tell you later. Yeah. The lifeboats are not in a museum.
No, the lifeboats disappeared. If you see anything online claiming this is a lifeboat from the Titanic, don't believe it.
Don't do that ever, yes.
And don't ever pay money for it.
Come on, Dan.
If you're able to afford a boat that's possibly a lifeboat from the Titanic, invest in us.
Controversial things. I don't believe that story because I don't want to. That's controversial too.
Someone's asking, can we confirm consoles? We can't confirm consoles, but they're highly likely.
They're super likely. I have so many favorite crew members.
What's your favorite crew passenger?
That's too difficult. One of
too many people.
Gosh, I can't. Three-bladed propeller theory. I like three.
Yeah, it makes it easier. Just copying his propellers.
What's the coolest fact you found in your research? Oh boy.
Oh no. We're not gonna know.
I like finding little. I can't tell you. It's a secret.
Well, yeah, we can't tell you anything. We found plenty of things. And
there's a few surprises still.
Get the game.
All right.
So, you know.
Favorite interior space. The lounge.
Oh, the lounge is very pretty.
Will you be going on Titanic 2 in 2018 if I finish designing it by then?
Oh, Matt.
I don't care. I said it.
You haven't slept lately, have you?
No, I haven't.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Morse code is in the game. I have not seen the violin. Has anyone seen the violin? No.
No,
Tom, you haven't seen the violin, have you?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I saw a violin in an antique shop.
Correct, Taylor. Did the is that quintet? I can't see. Have their quintet is 4, right? No, it's 5. 5. Reception room only, and probably the boat deck only. While the trio was in the reception room and the cafe Parisienne. We will recreate the vehicle, but it might have been created, correct? Yes.
yeah.
I will update that progress plan, even though I'll update it. I'll update it.
I got a good question here.
Yes.
Someone's asking, where can they find this podcast if they missed part of it? They say specifically chat, but I don't think there's going to be any way for us to save the text conversations going on. Unfortunately, there's some good stuff here. But you'll be able to find the podcast audio on our websites if you go to www.TitanicHG.com and then you go over to media and then podcasts archives. You'll find this podcast and you'll find all of our previous podcasts over the last year. You will probably find this podcast by tomorrow or so.
Oh, yes, you will be able to. I think do you meet Matsubui? Do we have him as a character?
Hosono?
Yeah, do we?
He's one of the ones who we keep adding and then removing. So he's on the fence.
I always wanted him. So yeah, we are still sending perks to those who donated. 3 people donated today. We haven't gotten the things to yet.
Yeah.
Tom met Julian Fellows, right?
Yeah, I met Julian Fellows and talked with him. He watched my movie. He watched part of Last Signals. He liked it.
What else is going on here?
If Titanic 2 happens, thumbs up from everybody on Titanic Honor and Glory's team.
What?
Someone asked if Titanic 2 happens. I said it's a thumbs up from everybody on Titanic Honor and Glory's team.
Okay. All right, Matt. You gotta stop getting involved with that subject.
I'm answering questions. Can
Just
thoughts on your trip to England? Oh, that was a fun thing.
What?
Learned a lot. A trip to England. Gosh, if anyone, there's so much. There's Titanic. I think Titanic lives in England. It seems right now. I mean, I'm serious. I don't know how else to describe it besides that. When I went to England, I felt like it was the first time I was actually connected to the Titanic. I touched Titanic, being in the lounge, going to that man's shed and touching his panels, and that almost.
Thanks for catching yourself there, Matt. Thank you. Yeah, no, that England trip was a lot of fun.
Yes.
I want to
Southwestern is still the Southwestern is not a hotel. It's now private residencies.
Private apartments, yeah.
Yeah.
One quick note about the trip to England. Most of that was done on our own dime. That wasn't us splurging with funds or anything.
I wanted to visit the paint factory, but that was not there anymore.
What?
The paint factory, sorry.
So, anyway, no, that England trip was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it was just so much fun.
We do know some of the books in the library. Yeah, I mean the first class lounge.
Yeah, we have a whole list of books that are confirmed in it, and then we have a list of like another 100 that are more than likely in it. So, we've got all that.
What do we think of the Titanic Museum in Belfast? I wish I could be there. I wish I could visit that.
I was there when they opened it with the Queen. Or the King. Or one of the royal family. And Julian Fellows.
Exterior demo or second demo, it's still a little ways away, but we have something else we're working on. Second class passengers head deck chairs, yes. People had Tom's been the Branson.
Pigeon Forge.
Pigeon Forge. Oh, I'm sorry.
I've been to Pigeon Forge, Orlando, Buena Park, which is closing this week, and
Goodness.
I've been to Belfast, Cherbourg, the Southampton Museum, and I've been to the traveling exhibit a number of times. And in a week and a half, I'll be at the Las Vegas one. So, wow.
The Olympics restaurant is on the Millennium. Correct?
Yeah, the Millennium. I forget the cruise
Millennium.
company, though.
I think it's Celebrity Cruise, or
Yeah, I knew it
it's
was a
Celebrity Cruise.
C. Carnival, Celebrity, I don't know.
Yeah, if no one's familiar, that there's a ship called the Millennium that has a whole bunch of. It has a restaurant decked with paneling from Olympics, a la carte restaurant.
Grand Staircase is finished.
Yes, so finished.
It is finished. It's so nice to say that.
How many windows does the Titanic have?
Oh.
We gotta count
Get
that
out of here.
because we get
Matt.
asked that question many times.
Yeah, Matt, why
and
don't you
by
go
the
count them?
In the sinking video, you do get a glimpse of the Grand Staircase. One of the first video glimpses. So nice glimpse.
I do own a few actually not from the Titanic. I don't own any. No one. I don't own anything from the Titanic. No one owns that. That'd be illegal.
I do.
Well, what about like little pieces of wood and stuff?
That's not. That's still technically illegal. I could call the feds. Okay.
Don't talk about that.
Hmm.
Can we do this
The
more
Windows
often?
Beach-
Yeah, why not? We love
We probably
attention.
should. Yes.
We love attention.
What?
What's your favorite breed of dog? Dachshund. Thank you.
I'm fond of the Havanese.
Have we designed the swimming pool yet? Well, actually, that was designed way back in like 1908. So that was already done for us.
Stop. You can't see it sink, though. I'm sorry to say, you cannot.
No, they closed the
There is a way. There would no, it'd be locked. There's no way to see the swimming pool sink.
With the sinking,
Historically.
with the sinking in the game, you're not going to get to see every room go down. You're only going to
No.
get to see the parts of the ship that someone realistically would have seen. So if rooms are locked,
There's no Byzantium in the cargo hold.
I
You know
don't
where
care.
the Byzantium. You know where the Byzantium is. Okay, sorry. I like that comment. That's all. Thank God for South P.
How much of a ship have you completed? 100,000 billion%.
No.
Matt
Oh.
answers.
Let's see. The last. It was raised the Titanic, by the way. A lot of the things that I'll tell you what I've been working on lately are the third class cabins on F deck. I've been working on that with our advisor, Bill Sauter. We've been working on trying to figure out the logistics to them because I know it sounds simple. Third class, is third class is steerage. It's just this bland, boring space, but it is still complicated for Titanic. Everything on Titanic is complicated.
There's no such thing as simple. As soon as we get to it, it's like, no, not simple.
They really did not consider us when they designed this ship.
And what
It
kind
is
of design?
There is a lot of white panels on board Titanic, though. It's white everywhere.
A lot of white paint.
Yeah.
There's a lot of white paint.
That's probably what caused it to sink.
There is a way to see the Rubaiyat. You have to know where it is located, and you have to open up a package probably to get to it.
Can you wander into a flooding room and drown in the game? Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
you can. The ship sinks in the game, and it sinks in real time, just like you guys watched. Now we're gonna, of course, redo all of the animations when we publish this, but you can go inside the ship. You're in the ship when it's going down.
What's that question?
If you stand in one spot, anywhere on the ship, and you just stand there for like however long it takes for the ship to go down, you're dead. There is no safe spot.
Yeah. This is a good question.
Please put a picture of Robin Gardner on the punching bag in the gymnasium. You know who he is?
Is that Chin guy?
Conspiracy nut.
He made the Switch conspiracy. He's the Switch conspiracy
Is
guy.
this the
There
guy
are
with
multiple
the-
storylines with different characters.
It's the guy with the
technically,
chin.
yes. One person asked, "Do you have a greater appreciation more than before for Thomas Andrews and his design skills pre-computer age?" My gosh, yes.
I mean, I've seen some of the drawings that they've done. When they designed the Titanic. It's amazing kind of drawings.
I've seen some of the drawings they've made for the Titanic, and I don't understand how they built the Titanic with those drawings.
Well, wait.
I'll also say that. They're master at what they did. It's incredible.
Wasn't most of the ship designed by Carlisle?
I mean,
yeah, I don't know the specifics, but I think it is a bit of a sort of inaccurate to say that Andrews just sat there and designed the whole thing like from the ground.
No, not one person. There's Tavolaris. Okay, let's see.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, here's the way Titanic was designed. Everyone just writes it off as Andrews designed it, which, in terms of the overall story, because he was on the sinking, because he was the architect on board, Andrews gets basically 100% of the credit in the eyes of history. However, the chief architect of the Titanic throughout most of the construction was Alexander Carlisle, who was Andrews' uncle, I believe. And he was just the director of the design team. He had multiple designers under him constantly working, which he oversaw. Later on in the construction, Carlisle resigned.
Yeah, Lord Peary.
What?
Oh, sorry. Lord Peary had a big hand in it too.
Yeah, and then his nephew, who has been training under him as an apprentice, Thomas Andrews, took over. So he took it then from there. So he was the chief architect, but if you see something on the Titanic, it's not like every little detail was done by Andrews or even Carlisle. There were lots of people contributing to the Titanic, and most of the carvings were improvised by the carvers. So, there's that.
The most recent... Oh, gosh.
What do we think of Fall of the Titanic? Shall we?
No.
Shall we?
What?
A game that, I'm not going to mention any specific game names, but...
Just did.
Well, no, I'm ending that conversation, and now I'm talking about another thing here. This is a new conversation. I'm not going to mention any specific game names, but if someone comes along and uses a lot of your old materials and puts it out there to beat you with a concept, does a low-quality job, and makes money off of it, you're not going to have a high opinion of it.
Speaking of low-quality things, has anyone seen those videos? Those on YouTube, he spams.
Yeah, someone just asked that. That's a friend of ours. He's actually
certain crew worked in 4-hour watches.
Because he did a great series of videos recently. It was I don't know if I should mention the game name. It's a game.
Something
you can
fell.
Look at his channel then. Everyone can post it in the comments, not Kyle. Kyle can't. Everyone else can because they know what it is.
Taylor just posted it. He said, look for that name on YouTube. But he did a series of videos on this game, and it was hilarious, to say the least.
HMS Britannic's 100th anniversary this year? It is. Wow, okay.
Oh, crud. Yeah, we got to do something now.
Yeah.
I don't think Titanic steel was brittle because an Olympic steel would be brittle. And certain crew members had 4-hour shifts. Some did not have. Some had longer than 4-hour shifts, right?
Titanic steel was proven to be on grade or above. There was nothing wrong with Titanic's steel. There was nothing wrong with Titanic's rivets. There was nothing wrong with Titanic's design. It really was just unlucky.
I don't think we have a percentage of Phase 3.
No, we don't. Phase 3 is get investors. I mean, we have the workload, which we're still cracking through. But
the song is one of the controversies, and that's a whole different ordeal. We won't be able to answer any other questions. Like we're trying to quickly answer questions. Can the main character get trapped? Yes. Have you ever looked into James Cameron's
I've heard of him.
eyes? I have not ever looked in. I've heard.
If you looked
Sorry, Eric. That's the best we can say about that.
If you looked into his eyes, you would see the Titanic.
Yes.
Okay. All right. You want to call it here?
Sorry, Eric. Will all the new little carvings be unique in the Grand Staircase? No,
Get
that's
out
impossible.
of here.
That would be.
That's impossible. Important ones like around the honor and glory. Are yes, but no. Sorry, sad face. Can he be moddable? Probably not. No, I don't think so. Does the character have that? I can't give. We're not giving out plot points.
No, we don't want to go into specifics either. There's a lot that we're just not going to tackle.
With the dying, there's sticking first.
All right, let's call it here, okay, guys?
It is 1:30. It's 3:08 a.m. Titanic time.
Okay.
Just let it know.
It's approximately when collapsible B is being picked up.
Could be, yeah, I'm scared.
All right, guys. Really, thank you all for joining us.
Definitely, thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Yeah, it was great having you here. Excellent turnout. This was the first time any of us really watched that video as well. You know, it was always done in pieces. This was the first time we sat through it.
I'm going to rewatch it now.
Oh,
well, I'm going to rewatch it tomorrow.
I'm going to sleep.
And I animated the whole thing, and it was still strange watching it over again.
Yeah.
Something like new.
So thank you.
It's up to 12,400 views by now.
I'm going to look through it and find all the things I could have done better with my little notes and be like, oh, I forgot to tell him that.
Even here, when we're just rambling and taking dozens of questions, we have 230 listeners. So really, guys, thank you so much for sticking around with us, sticking with us from the beginning. For those of you who were here then, thanks for all of those who joined us. You can find this podcast uploaded probably by tomorrow on our podcast archives. We'll share the link on our Facebook, so make sure you tune in there. We really should do more podcasts, especially since it's a paid subscription. Again, for those of you who are listening here and might not be too familiar with our Facebook, we actively encourage you guys to really get involved in our Facebook. That is where most of our updates go. YouTube, we only update occasionally. Our website, same thing. Twitter, barely even know what that thing is. Our Facebook page is the one where you're going to see those updates. And another quick thing, it is a lot of work chasing investors and doing the business stuff of this game. So when you see maybe a couple weeks go by or even a month where there's no update, we're working. We're definitely working. Matt and Kyle are modeling on a regular basis, but we're also going into those areas now which are either going to be boring or we can't reveal them. So I'm either helping them or working on the script or pursuing the business aspects of it, along with Matt here. People are asking about donations. Real quick last note on that. You can certainly donate. You go to our website. There is a PayPal donation button at the bottom of the screen, and it also takes Visa if you do not have a PayPal account. Donate whatever you would like to. We are still giving away perks, at least the digital ones where you can go and get your name added to the game and things like that. We also have our store. We are not doing a fundraiser currently where we are encouraging people to donate or trying to reach a specific goal. We are seeking investors on the 7-digit level. And these donations are obviously not going to total up to there, but they keep us going while we are working to secure the fundings. And we can't answer any questions about investments unless someone out there is genuinely interested in investing. So that's that. Thanks again for all joining us. This video is going to be on our YouTube page. We don't intend to delete it. Check it out. I look forward to reading the comments on our Facebook and on our video. It's been out for 12 hours, this video, less than 12 hours, and we're 13,000 views. That's phenomenal. So thank you again. I'll see you guys later. Anything you guys want to add, Matt, Kyle?
No, thanks guys I hope you enjoyed this. It was a lot of work for us to suddenly do. I feel like we just suddenly wanted to do this like a week ago. Let's just make a video.
Yeah, just off the cuff decision. But it's such a big thing because people
3-hour video.
Yeah, people can use this to learn about syncing. And
At least to a point, it's pretty.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
wanted to be as close as we could do it in the time we had, and I think we did a pretty banging job.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, Matt, Kyle, you really put this together well. Kyle, especially on the animations.
Yes.
So, well done.
so many keyframes.
I give you 2 exploding funnel 2s up.
Oh, yeah, also, the song in the beginning, which was playing right before the podcast, that was by Gustav Mahler, Quartet for Piano and Strings in A minor Allegro, also known as the song from Shutter Island. So,
Shutter Island.
Okay, well, thanks again, guys, and good night.
All right.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everybody.
Goodbye.
Everyone, make sure to think of Titanic again before going to bed.
Yep.
That's what it's all about, and all the people.
All right. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Oh, we're saying good night.